are from. Like that's not something we're aware of. Strangely,
I think they come
I think
from
it's the UK.
Lunchables, Tyler. They come from Lunchables, right? They're grown-up Lunchables.
No, that you would think Americans would know where the submarine sandwich came from, but we don't.
Mm-hmm.
Jared
From submarine.
can't.
Well, the po' boy, which is almost it's kind of like submarine. It's from Nolans, isn't it? I think po' boy is from down there. I think Philly, the Philly area is
That's
where
what
the
I'm
subs are
saying.
from.
It's real similar to a
Connecticut.
Philly cheesesteak sandwich. So
Connecticut.
it's from Connecticut.
Yep.
That ain't far from Philly. That's right down the road from Philly.
From 1965.
It's
Same
not
year
bad.
as Singapore's independence year.
You're talking about
So
Subway
that-
Sandwich, the company, right?
Yep. Subway.
Not the
the
same
restaurant.
thing. We need to find out the origins of the submarine sandwich.
Okay,
Ask
great.
somebody from Philly.
Yes.
They'll tell you Philly. Ask somebody from Connecticut. They'll tell you Connecticut.
Yeah. Regional.
Okay.
Probably like
and
Wichita.
I want to play the game, the Jeopardy.
Which game?
Where is the origin of? I want the music, Tyler.
Okay, Jeopardy music. Okay, hold on. Here we go.
Where is the origin of curry?
Curry.
Yep.
Thailand?
It's England.
No.
Where?
If
I read that.
knowing Cheryl, it's either Japan or Singapore, but it's not Singapore because Singapore's so new, so it's got to be Japan. And by the way, there are Japanese curry restaurants that are many generations old.
Really good.
How about,
I think it's British.
I'm saying
It's British.
Osaka.
Okay.
India?
British. Egypt.
Okay.
India.
But I saw. Okay, let me read. Curry originated in the Indian subcontinent.
Tamil.
No, that's not correct actually. Hold
Yeah.
on. No, it's actually British. Wait, hold on. Let
How
me
is
read
it
the article.
British?
Yeah. So the
Was
word curry.
introduced. The
Correct.
reason why I checked on this is because my Indian friend in Tokyo told me that curry doesn't belong to India. I said, oh, I see. So I checked, and then it says curry was introduced to English cuisine starting with Anglo-Indian cooking in the 17th century, as spicy sauces were added to plain boiled and cooked meats. So that's when it's from 1809.
Yeah. So Cheryl, originally the word curry in Tamil was for the sauce of rice that is cooked, but the British
Gravy.
understood that any gravy or any sauce became a curry, and they started calling all sauces curries. That's how it started.
So it's from British.
It
Okay.
is the British.
Well,
If Vinay says so, yeah.
if you go to Latin America, Mexico, I suspect some of you had mole.
Oh, hell yeah.
M-O-L-E.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would bet you that it was invented before the 1800s. It's
Yep.
from Oaxaca. They've got like 6 or 7 different colors and flavors.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, by the way.
Chocolate.
Yep.
Yes.
Curry is from British, but kale is from Japan.
That's if you live in Tokyo, you understand that one. The Japanese love kare, by the way. Japan has this
Indo kale.
Yeah, Japan has this amazing kind of late night special style of diners. It's what Denny's is to America. Is you have kare for Japanese actually, but it's not at all like. By the way, Japan has Denny's, actual real Denny's, like quite a lot of them actually. But
very good ones.
Yeah, but they have also kare, which is like a Japanese-ish, Indian-ish dish, and it's usually had late in the evening after a few beers.
Yes, that's right. Either that or ramen. They call it kare house.
Yeah.
Netflix has a great series called Midnight Diner. It's a Tokyo Stories. It's really good.
Tokyo has fantastic late night food. Actually, it's really they're very aware of it. That there's another meal after dinner. They have dinner, and then you get drunk, and then there's another secondary dinner after the drinking, and that's these beef bowls and ramens. And
yes, surprisingly something very oily after alcohol.
Yes. and Croatia has what's that? Borek. Oh my god, that is the best after drunk food of all time. This like cheesy, doughy roll. It's like it looks like a cinnamon bun, like a snail, but it's like cheese with dough warmed. Oh my god, it is absolutely mind-blowingly good. Anyway, so the biggest news headlines. Welcome to Food Around the World, and
in space, because we got Fiorina here.
Oh yeah,
fortune cookies around the world.
Tyler, did we move to food choices here?
No, we just somehow got on the topic of food. I don't even know how we got on it. But
I think it was
I wanted to
Cheryl
add,
It's all shared.
Tyler, shout out to Mr. Donut.
hey, I wanted to quickly add about Kadi. You know, that it dates all the way back to 2600 BCE before the British discovered it. And I'm using air quotes. They've been combining spices together for a while now to come up with that, with those flavors. So it has like a long, rich history, even as far as like in places of Pakistan and stuff. So yeah, just wanted to add that tidbit.
Okay, here we go. Are we ready? Yep, we're 6 minutes into it. Let's do the biggest, hottest, craziest headlines of the moment that people are sharing all over the interwebs. So, where's my air horn? Cheryl? Can somebody find my air horn, please? There it is. Okay.
Beep, 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 beep,
Beep, beep, beep. The biggest news story at this very moment, which a lot of people DM'd me, is in an abrupt reversal, OnlyFans suspends its October 1st policy change banning porn after securing assurances and aims to provide a home for all creators. That was a terribly written headline. What they meant to say is OnlyFans is reversing its recent decision to ban porn. That's a little better, a little more simple English for you. And this is a continuing story where about 3 days ago, OnlyFans says they're going to ban porn. And people said, what the F are you talking about? You're a porn website. What does that mean you're going to ban porn? That's like Tesla stop selling cars. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's your entire business. It's a two-sided marketplace is what we call them. You have buyers and sellers. The sellers are selling porn. The buyers are buying porn. So if you don't have porn, what the fuck are you buying and selling on OnlyFans? And that was very confusing. And then even 12 hours ago, the CEO of OnlyFans came on the mic to announce he doesn't actually blame MasterCard as many other people are blaming. He blames very specific banks. And he named the banks. There was like 4 of them. And now, 12 hours later, OnlyFans is reversing its recent decision to ban porn, making us wonder if this was all a genius PR maneuver. Yes?
No, you're right. That's what I'm saying. Ding, ding, ding. Right.
Okay. So, and it likely is because, my God, did this become a very viral story. And so, yeah, kudos to them. That's how you do it. That will win. Someone needs a PR awards, like an annual awards of the best like PR campaign. Like that. This is it. I'm nominating this one. That was very clever. Boy, did they get a lot of attention for this one. And now the whole world knows they're not banning porn. Everyone now knows who didn't know about OnlyFans. A lot more people do. That's for sure. And the curious bit is they say here they've secured assurances and aims to provide a home for all creators. OnlyFans reversing. It had planned to prohibit sexual explicit content starting October 1st, prompting user backlash. It said Wednesday that it will continue to provide a home for all creators. Okay. The subscription-based creator platform OnlyFans has reversed. Thank you to everyone for making your voices heard, it said in a statement on Wednesday. We have secured assurances necessary to support our diverse creator community and have suspended the planned October 1st policy change. And when they say diverse creator community, they mean, small breasts, large breasts, big hips, small hips. I mean really diverse. I mean super, super diverse creators there on OnlyFans. So, what the hell are they talking about? They're proud of their diverse creators. What does that even mean?
They have some positions on it. It's it's not 100% porn.
Yeah.
So is it a new payment intermediary? Maybe a
Yeah,
Stripe or somebody?
that's what we're going to get to here. An OnlyFans representative said the change was planned to comply with the requests of our banking partners and payout providers. Sex workers had told Insider, which is the tech site, insider.com, that they were angry and confused by the change. They're giving us less than 2 months' notice to now find a new platform to move all of our fans to in an attempt to just survive and keep paying rent, a sex worker named Nat Cole told Insider. CEO Tim Stokely had told the Financial Times that the banks BNY Mellon, JP Morgan Chase, Metro Bank created unfair obstacles to pay creators because of OnlyFans' association with sex work. The CEO said in an interview on Tuesday, that was yesterday, that where'd it go? He said in an interview on Tuesday that JP Morgan Chase was particularly aggressive in closing accounts of sex workers or any business that supports sex workers. OnlyFans, which was said to have had trouble wooing investors because of the platform's association with sex work, stopped fundraising after it announced plans to ban porn, sources close to the company told Insider. The CEO, however, denied the company's decision to ban porn stemmed from trouble finding investors. He told the Financial Times that sexually explicit content would be allowed on OnlyFans if banks changed their practices. This decision was made to safeguard their funds and subscriptions from increasingly unfair actions by banks and media companies. Stokely said, "We obviously did not want to lose our most loyal creators." And that's the end of the article. And it doesn't say who they got their assurances from that they can continue doing business.
Tyler?
Yes.
Strange question.
Yeah.
What about, is there a possibility, could Visa pick that up?
Yeah.
Could Visa pick that up? Because Visa's doing a lot with crypto. Could they pick that up?
Yeah.
In terms of not...
Hello. I like how you're thinking.
I'm just thinking who would pick it up, right? I'm thinking critically, who would pick it up? Someone who accepts crypto would pick it up. And they're obviously getting in the game heavy, so maybe they're wanting to be possibly a crypto bank at some point where they could be that marker.
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought.
I like where you're thinking. So that's the most shared story at the moment. And now the second most shared story at the moment is really boring about Microsoft Xboxes. We're just going to skip that. They're just saying they're getting ready for Christmas. And just because they're big stories doesn't mean they're interesting to geeks like ourselves. Number 3 is interesting. It's from Bloomberg and others that Facebook's David Marcus, which used to he was the leader of Facebook Messenger, and now that boat is up and sailing, he's now leading what's called Novi, which is Facebook's digital wallet. And they do have a digital currency called Diem, previously known as Libra, which got basically kiboshed. I mean, it got a very cold reception. And people weren't trusting Facebook with, their social media data, let alone their finances. So it was kind of DOA. And now David Marcus says the Novi digital wallet is ready, but we'll wait for the Diem currency, and it is definitely looking at building NFT features. So now he's just hyping at this point by throwing the NFT buzzword into the mix here, and that will get people excited. I'm trying to predict what his next move is to try and get additional buzz. If they, what would really make it tick is if instead of waiting for their own Diem currency to cooperate, if they actually enabled it with Bitcoin via Lightning in the same way that Twitter plans to do. That would be very interesting. That's how you would get some adoption. You would get, if you made it, this could be really smart. If they made this Facebook's digital wallet called Novi, if it accepted Bitcoin and you could hold Bitcoin and other popular cryptocurrencies and exchange them with other people on Facebook, if they made that wallet the simplest crypto wallet on the planet, that logged in with your Facebook credentials, and it was just super crazy simple, which Facebook is renowned for doing. I mean, the reason Facebook was, it owes much of its initial success to the fact that it made it really, really, really simple to make your own personal web profile on the internet and connect with your friends. They made that super simple, much easier than anyone else ever did before or since. So they understand the power of simplicity. The whole crypto space is a bit complex. They could introduce the world's simplest Bitcoin wallet and make acquiring Bitcoins, still to this day, acquiring Bitcoins is surprisingly difficult if you via Coinbase or via whatever. And it could be way, way, way easier. And Facebook could totally enable that.
Can I ask a question though?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not a crypto person, but is that doesn't a minimum bar need to be set? And I don't mean by denying access, but I mean a technical bar. I mean, these are, I'm concerned because if you do this through Facebook, and I don't know if Michelle's here or not, but a lot of the hacks are just dumb, poor user behavior, right? And I'm curious, once crypto's involved, how many hacks are going to happen on Facebook if this happened?
In fairness,
there's so many quizzes and things that people do that they get suckered into, and
yeah, but
I can just imagine Chris, it going parabolic.
I think you would agree Facebook has actually done considering it has billions of users, and half of those users are below average intelligence. They've done a surprisingly good job of security, considering their scale.
Oh no, they're always losing data. Just they're not disclosing it. They're always losing data.
Okay.
They're always losing data every day.
Well, then they must
I'm more just saying that user behavior. I think user behavior is what I'm more talking about. You can have great security, but phishing is the main vector of these hacks when you hear about it, or reusing passwords. Just bad user hygiene, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. They'll all these on Facebook, when you see these quizzes, and it's only geniuses will figure out this, or type yes and magic will appear, and then you look in the article, or you see 20,000 posts, and then you see the ones where they make you download, or not necessarily download, but have it linked to your Facebook account and collect all your information. And it's to fill out something are you a genius, or what's your name if you were living on Mars. And it's just, I'm worried that once you have a wallet or something like that tied to that account, it's this user hygiene that's going to kill it, maybe even kill Facebook.
Okay, so there's a few people writing blog posts about this, and here's one from Bloomberg. Says Facebook considers building NFT features alongside their digital wallet. The social network is definitely looking at digital assets as part of its push into financial products. Executives say now, who else is left in the NFT? Who isn't becoming a platform for NFTs at this point? And Apple, notably, the Facebook is considering building. We're definitely looking at number of ways to get involved in the space because we think we're in a really good position to do so. And then here's one from cryptonews.com, and they say Facebook eyes NFT market, warns of Chinese e-pay dominance. Facebook could be set to take the plunge into the world of non-fungible tokens, and has also claimed that America is losing the digital payments race to China. Facebook's David Marcus, the head of the social media giant's blockchain operations and the architect of its Diem stablecoin plans, claimed that the firm was in a good position to get involved in NFT. The company is definitely looking at a number of ways to enter the sector. Marcus's remit includes having Novi, Facebook's forthcoming digital wallet, which he claims was ready now, but will not debut until the launch of the scaled back Diem project. However, he did concede that Facebook will entertain the notion of launching Novi without a parallel Diem debut as a last resort, in which case it would have to use either the US stablecoin or, long shot, maybe even Bitcoin. That would be fantastic if they did both. Actually, perhaps a reference to the glacial progress the token has made since it was announced in 2019. Plans for a global stablecoin pegged to a basket of international currencies based in Switzerland and involving some of the world's biggest payment firms have been reeled in after regulatory pressure took its toll. The likes of MasterCard dropped out of the Diem project, forcing a massive rethink. But Facebook is still eager to move into the payment space and has already laid some of the groundwork by building up its Facebook Pay network. The company appears wary of falling behind international rivals and warned Washington that slowing tech giants' e-pay plans could prove costly. China's own tech giants Alibaba and Tencent have fast-growing e-pay platforms and have already cornered 15% of the nation's payments market. Both are now eyeing overseas expansion. Marcus stated that without more innovation in the payments technology, Western nations like the U.S. would struggle to keep up with China in adapting to a world where digital payments are dominant. Okay. So NFTs, people are naturally kind of a little skeptical about this, Facebook getting into NFTs. It's just they're trying to add a little sizzle to the steak around their digital project, their digital payments project. So the next big headline is from Axios. It says California expands the lawsuit against Activision Blizzard. Watch this headline. We've been reading about this. This started a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, Cheryl, where it started out that Activision Blizzard was being sued by California, representing Blizzard, current and former Activision Blizzard female team members who were claiming sexual discrimination and harassment. Piece of cake. Simple. Got it. That's easy. No confusion there. And shortly after that, some tweets from 2013 were revealed showing male co-workers acting rather juvenilely on a business trip where they named their they had a whole bunch of hotel rooms together, and they named one of the rooms the Cosby room, and they put a picture of Bill Cosby above the bed, and that's obviously an incredibly poor taste. So, and could be highly offensive and concerning to female coworkers, understandably. So, then the couple of senior leaders at the company said this is not really truly reflective and representative of Blizzard as a company. That inspired 2,500 of their employees to sign a letter saying, actually, we disagree. We think Blizzard does have a problem with regard to sexual harassment and sexual discrimination. So then they did a walkout and they protested in front of the building, the campus, in a business park. This is not in a public area. There's nobody to protest for. No one's going to hear you other than your other coworkers who are inside the building, because it's in the middle of nowhere in a business park. So, but it was for the cameras. Make no mistake about that. That was clearly a PR move. And interestingly, those 2,500 signatures, which represents about 25% of the company, that is an indication that you have at least 25% of your employees rather unhappy about things. Now, we noticed when they did their protest in front of the building, this was not a female protest. There were, of course, female protesters, but it was predominantly male. Why is that interesting? Well, when that happened, I started making the comment, they need to be very careful because this is how unions start. When you have a signature collection like this, they're going to get a union representative is going to reach out and be like, can we see that list? And can we talk to those people on that list and find out how disgruntled they are and what kind of changes they would like to see be made in their employment agreements, and maybe a little collective bargaining. That's kind of our specialty. That's our ball of wax. We only take a 2% cut, but we might be able to get you a 5% raise. Sound good? Right. Sounds great. So the union, of course, did exactly what I'm describing. And now we actually know the name of the union who did it. But yet no journalist is reporting that. But what they are reporting now is, here's the headline: California expands its lawsuit against Activision Blizzard to include a whole new set of people they're representing, to include temp workers of Blizzard, not the employees, the temp workers. And says the game maker interfered with their own investigation by shredding pertinent documents. Now, this gets really interesting because in the story from Axios, which I will tweet out for everyone's convenience who wants to do the deep dive, just go to our Twitter account at TNATW, where that tweet was just twatted on Twitter. So it says the California has expanded its anti-discrimination lawsuit against Blizzard, adding temporary workers to the female full-time employees, of whom it is suing on behalf. Now, the temporary workers, were they sexually discriminated against? No. The temporary workers aren't claiming they were sexually abused or discriminated against or harassed. They're claiming, and I quote, "We suffer from stress. We suffer physical ailments. We're overworked and underpaid." Okay, well, that's unions. That's music to the ears of unions. But we're now expanding the entire scope of this lawsuit and to include, because once they got that signature collection of 2,500 team members, which also included these temporary workers, of course, the union interviews them one by one, all 2,500, makes a list of their demands and their grievances, and then they realize, we have a bigger lawsuit than we thought. We've got hundreds, if not thousands, of employees and temporary workers who are aggrieved, and we could bundle them all together rather than getting, the 50 or so ladies who were claiming sexual discrimination and harassment and making a lawsuit about that. Why don't we get the 2,000 employees who feel like they're underpaid and overworked and suffering from mental issues? And now we have a much bigger collective leverage. Because now if we revolt, we can go to the negotiation table, not only representing the 50 to 100 ladies who were part of the original lawsuit. Now we've got thousands of employees. And now it's no longer about sexual harassment or discrimination. It's about thousands of your employees are now part of our collective bargaining agreement. And if you don't agree to our demands, we're leaving, which is, 25% of your company. And now this is how unions work. So it says in the article, again, I tweeted it out, a copy, the amended complaint was filed on Monday and redefines the group that was wronged by the gaming giant. We're redefining the group that was wronged, and we're redefining what was wronged. We're now including a lot of guys, mostly guys. This whole suit's now mostly about guys all of a sudden. And low guys who feel they were not being paid enough and who feel like they are overworked and underpaid. So not only does the new amended complaint redefine the group that was wronged by the gaming giant, it's redefining what was wronged. A copy reviewed by Axios specifically mentions that California's protections against anti-harassment, equal pay and equal employment opportunity provisions exist for employees and contingent and temporary workers. Throughout the lawsuit, the word employees has been changed to workers, because a lot of these people who signed this, collective signature thing were not employees. They were the temp workers. And these temp workers feel very like they've been treated unjustly. In reference to harassment, sexual discrimination regarding pay and other allegations, the DFEH also says Activision Blizzard has stymied its efforts through NDAs. Now, this is really a whole other twist to this whole scenario. They're claiming that Blizzard has kind of ruined their ability to interview all of the team members at Blizzard by having them sign non-disclosure agreements, requiring employees to speak with the company before contacting or having any conversations with the DFEH, which is the California agency that's kind of suing them, bringing this lawsuit against them. So the employees have signed a gag order, a non-disclosure agreement. And the question is, when did they sign that? It seems like they might have signed it even after this lawsuit started. So the lawsuit starts, And then Blizzard's lawyers say, get everyone to sign NDAs so that they can't be interviewed. And they did.
Hey, Tyler, when did the first employee start leaving? I'm trying to frame this because
about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Because my college roommate got pretty high up at Blizzard, and I remember now on my Facebook that he was leaving Blizzard maybe 2-3 months ago now. So I'm wondering if he's got any insight. Let me call him.
So the new updated the updated complaint that was filed on Monday claims that this directly interferes with their ability to investigate, prosecute, and remedy workplace discrimination and harassment violations on behalf of the employees and contingent or temporary workers. It alleges in part that documents related to investigations and complaints were shredded by human resources personnel, meaning HR has to keep file of complaints. When an employee says I was wronged by another employee or by a boss or whatever, they go to HR and it gets documented, right? And now apparently the HR team has shredded those documents. But that's what they're claiming or alleging. The question is, how would they know unless they ask the employee and the employee says, yeah, I filed a complaint. And so it should be there in HR somewhere. And HR says, yeah, we don't have it. So then you could accuse
also,
them.
Tyler, it's two things are possible. One is somebody from HR, or somebody who knew about the shredding just leaked it to the government. I mean, they could just leak it and tell them we did. People did that. The other thing I'd point out is that I think this California agency that's investigating doesn't have subpoena power. But if the California AG or district attorney got involved and they started issuing subpoenas, the NDA won't protect them because, so yeah.
Yep. I think you're exactly right. A spokesperson for Activision Blizzard says that the company has complied with every proper request in support of its review, even as we have been implementing reforms to ensure our workplaces are welcoming and safe for every employee. With regards to claims that we have destroyed information by shredding documents, those claims are not true. We took appropriate steps to preserve information relevant to the investigation. And as you said, maybe they're not under any legal responsibility to reveal those documents. We have
I know of stories in Wall Street during whatever scandals that happened years ago, where they companies thought they might actually one of them involved a tech company. If you remember Miniscribe, I think it was years ago.
No,
I think that it was a tech company, but they got some of the investment bankers in their deal. The deal went bad, and they knew they'd probably be an investigation. So somebody actually put it in an email to basically get rid of everything, and they justified it like, well, we don't have a subpoena yet,
Never put that shit in an email, by the way. So the next thing it says, we provided the DFEH with clear evidence that we do not have gender pay or promotion disparities. Our senior leadership is increasingly diverse with a growing number of women in key leadership roles across the company. Stories shared with Axios. The reason Axios wrote this stories shared with Axios from the Workers Alliance, ABK Workers Alliance. That's the name of a union. ABK Workers Alliance, specifically from the quality assurance and customer service departments, paint a picture of brutal overtime paired with little pay. So now you know who's talking to the journalists. It's the unions. And now you know who's talking to the employees, the unions. And now you know who's upset they can't talk to the employees because of the NDAs. And as a contract employee, I feel there's a lot of pressure to excel, impress, and move through the ranks as fast as you can before your contract ends and you're forced to go 3 months without income or find another job, one worker said. I take pride in what I do, but it feels like it's never enough. We suffer from stress, another worker said. We suffer physical ailments. We are overworked and underpaid across the board. So that's the new updated lawsuit. There's a whole much bigger cohort of temporary temp workers who feel they are overworked and underpaid. And now the union has shifted focus because it's all about leverage at the negotiation table. And it's how many workers can you get on your side and threaten to sink the ship if they don't comply. So interesting to see how the focus has shifted there. So the next,
Tyler,
yes.
Before we move on, I see Donna, Danish, Carl, and
Cam and
VR,
Danish,
Nicholas in the room.
Okay, thank you. So, as I invite up some of our regular friendly faces here on the stage here, let's see, hello, Donna, and
raise your hand.
Okay, that's okay.
Danish.
All right. The next big story is Fitbit announces Charge 5 with a rounded design, a larger and brighter color display, GPS, and more arriving in the fall for $179.95. Just around that sweet Christmas price point. What a coincidence. Coming out around Christmas at a Christmas price. How perfectly timed. The next one is from the Washington Post, a look at something called Vaccine Talk, which is a tightly moderated Facebook group for vaccine skeptics or vaccine hesitant folks with 70,000 members that aims to change their minds with evidence-based info as social media giants struggle to crack down on false claims about COVID. Ordinary users are finding ways to reach vaccine skeptics and win them over. And it indeed, we've seen quite a bit of, well, let me see, will that article open here? The social media giants struggle to crack down on false claims. Nope. Okay, so the next one is Facebook adds features to Facebook Messenger on its 10-year anniversary, including word effects, contact sharing, and birthday gifting via Facebook Pay. That's kind of cool. To celebrate its 10-year anniversary, we're testing audio and video calls with the Facebook app messaging experience so people can make and receive calls regardless of which app they're using. Although earlier in Facebook Hearing, Messenger app had operated as a standalone experience, Facebook tells us that now it's starting to see Messenger less as a separate entity, more of an underlying technology that can help to power many of the new experiences Facebook's now developing. We've been focused more on real-time experiences. Oh, like live streaming, real-time experiences, watching together, rooms, live audio rooms, maybe even a little live shopping. Oh, like in Asia? Oh, okay. Now I see what you're laying down here. And we've started to think of Messenger as a connective tissue regardless of the service. Oh, you mean like we do right now in Thailand, where when we're watching the live stream, we can message through Facebook Messenger with the people selling and they can talk to the buyers in real time? Yeah, like that. Like Lakeisha's clapping her mic because she's seen this just as I have. Facebook, this is a test, but the bigger version is for us to unlock content and communities that may be accessible in Messenger, and the Facebook app is going to become more about shared real-time experiences. So there are photos of these new poll games and word effects and contact sharing and buying somebody a birthday present. Which I'm going to tweet this out so that you can see it. They created a cute little animation inside of this blog post from TechCrunch. So there you go. A whole new features coming to Messenger. So the next one is Microsoft says Xbox cloud gaming will expand. Who cares? Next one is from TechCrunch, a company called Cribl, spelled Cribl, Cribl, which helps companies monitor and analyze data created by their infrastructures, raises $200 million at a $1.5 billion valuation. The next one is that Facebook's most viewed story in Q1 from Chicago Tribune linking a doctor's death to COVID vaccines shows why publishers should consider how content is shared. On Friday, the New York Times had a scoop. Facebook, that known vector for the that is a known vector for the spread of kid photos, neighborhood goings-ons, and whatnot, and theories of how much toddler blood Hillary Clinton drinks per week. Oh my God. This blog post is really letting Facebook have it. So it says Facebook sent a ton of traffic to the Chicago Tribune story, so why is everyone mad at them? Because the story was a hit among anti-vaxxers, showing you don't have to be a fake news outfit to put public health at risk. So the the Chicago Tribune clearly needs to be a little more careful because one little story can become a huge viral story. And now Chicago Tribune, people are starting to think that you are an anti-vax publication. So on Friday, the New York Times had a scoop that Facebook, that website that's known for spreading of kid photos, neighborhoods going on, and theories of how much toddler blood Hillary Clinton drinks per week, had pledged itself toward greater transparency in what exactly people are consuming on its platform. Towards that end, last week, it released a new report with a bunch of charts and tables on widely viewed content on Facebook for Q2, April through June. But what about Q1? Well, it turns out there had been a Q1 report, but it had been shelved by executives after they debated whether it could cause public relations problem. So what was so problematic about the Q1 report? In that report, a copy of which was provided to the New York Times, the most viewed link for all of Q1 was a news article with a headline suggesting that the coronavirus vaccine was at fault for the death of a Florida doctor. And which scurrilous vendor of fake news wares produced this article, the one so terrible that Facebook executives couldn't stand for the world to know that it was their most popular article on the platform for Q1? The headline of the article, from the South Florida Sun Sentinel and republished by the Chicago Tribune: a healthy doctor died 2 weeks after getting COVID-19 vaccine. CDC is investigating why. The link was viewed by nearly 54 million Facebook accounts in the U.S. Many commenters on the post raised questions about the vaccine safety. 6 of the top 20 sharers came from public Facebook pages that regularly post anti-vaccination content on Facebook, according to data from CrowdTangle, a social media analytics firm owned by Facebook. Other top sharers of the story included Filipino Facebook pages supporting President Rodrigo Duterte, a pro-Israel Facebook group, and a page called Just the Facts, which describes itself as putting out the truth even when the media won't. So the article in the Chicago Tribune, whose popularity was so embarrassing to Facebook, why in the world is that more embarrassing for Facebook than it is for the Chicago Tribune? True, the 54 million Facebook users saw the story is only the latest proof of something we've known about the platform for a long time. If you drop poison into Facebook's content, well, it can extraordinarily effective at spreading it out. That's the terrible and important reality. And a bit embarrassing for the Chicago Tribune. So that's a bit of that article. So the next article is an interview with the CISA director, Jen Easterly, on attack prevention, hiring new staff, improving ability to scan federal networks for malicious code, and more. So you can read all about that interview. It's also picked up by the Washington Post and others. Just tweeting this one out right now. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, that's gone. The next one is a startup called Balance, which offers B2B checkout service for merchants and marketplaces, raises $25 million. Xiaomi reports Q2 revenue rose 64% year over year to $13.5 billion, as net income rose 80% year over year to $1.28 billion, and says it will buy autonomous driving startup Deep Motion. For holy shit, Xiaomi's not fucking around. As I wouldn't expect, I don't think they would. They have planned an EV, and now it appears it will be an autonomous EV from Xiaomi. Holy smokies. That's one company you do not want to screw around with. As Apple and every smartphone manufacturer knows, Xiaomi has quickly become the world's leading smartphone manufacturer in short order.
Tyler, do you think China's going to try to hog them for themselves?
No doubt it's going to be made in China. No doubt it'll be made in Shenzhen. But Xiaomi makes it's like IKEA. The amount of shit that Xiaomi makes, just think of the IKEA catalog and just imagine digital products, and now you have an idea of what Xiaomi is in Asia. So anything with an electric cable on it, Xiaomi makes it for your house, but it usually runs on batteries in Xiaomi's case. And I'm talking to you right now on a 35-inch Xiaomi screen, which is stunningly gorgeous and a third or a quarter of the price of anybody else's with the same specs. And a Xiaomi fan, and it's hard to find things Xiaomi doesn't make that runs on batteries. So, and they make great shit. Matter of fact, I just bought, believe it or not, well, I don't want to tell you what it is, but and the design is stunning, like really goddamn good, like Scandinavian design. It's like not your typical, it doesn't look Chinese, it looks Scandinavian. Anyway, they make great shit, and now they're going to make a goddamn electric autonomous car. And they're not to be trifled with. So it'll likely be far less expensive than any other car on the market with the same relative specs. So make note of that. The next big article is the one that we covered. How's this California Activision lawsuit in here twice? This is really weird. So let me refresh here. The next one is a study details how people use hashtags, video effects, and music on TikTok to promote hate against Asians, women, Muslim, Jews, and blacks, and LGBTQ people. And this is from USA Today, and it's based on a report, or a study rather, by, who was the source of the study? A London-based Institute for Strategic Dialogue, the ISD. And the ISD says, they've been monitoring TikTok, and there seems to be a real notable, strong, and no lack of kind of moderation around hateful content to all types of minority groups. TikTok videos spewing hate against Asians, LGBTQ, migrants and refugees, women, Muslims, and Jews. Researchers warned exposure to extremism is dangerous because TikTok reaches kids and teens. Extremists use TikTok features like video effects, video grid layout, music to promote their hate-filled videos. And this isn't, there's more than might meet the eye here, because in recent weeks we've had headlines that are potential dots to connect to this story. And I will go ahead and play the conspiracy theory music here for you, because we read headlines recently in the past week that the CCP of China has joined the board of TikTok. They have 3 board seats. That means with 1 board seat, they pretty much control the company. They have incredible influence in the company. Okay, hold that thought. The CCP also, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, announced they want to have unfettered access and influence in TikTok's algorithms to control what the people in China are exposed to, and they want to limit any content that they don't like. And they even said which content they do like, and the content they don't like twerking. They said vulgar dancing, aka twerking, and celebrity gossip, and social nonsense, just like shit content, that stuff that's so popular on social media apps these days. Well, the CCP and Uncle Xi doesn't like that. He doesn't think it's good for Chinese people to be consuming shit content. And hey, Uncle Xi, I'm with you, baby. I'm with you. But there's this thing called freedom, and I'm not sure how we're going to deal with it. But they know how they're going to deal with it. They're going to block that shit out. So the same app that we're talking about here, where Uncle G is going to limit the twerking, that all that evil stuff, all that negative stuff that's, the negative influence on Chinese society is going to be eradicated. However, TikTok in America, notably, is now filled with hate speech from hate groups towards, as I said, immigrants and Muslims and whatever, all of it. So, is Uncle Xi gonna also filter out that content in America, or might they be doing the opposite? Because Facebook's head of cybersecurity, the FBI's head director, and the MI6's director have all spoken on the record in recent weeks to say China is leading the kind of misinformation and weaponized content on Facebook. So might they do the same in TikTok, where they happen to have influence and even a fucking board seat? Might they be weaponizing TikTok in the same way they were Facebook and the FBI say they're weaponizing and causing division of American citizens on Facebook? What do we think? You're stunned. You're silent. I understand. It's a heavy.
If Russia could do it, why can't China? I mean, it's impossible.
Yeah.
But the question is, with this information, hi, this is out. What the question is, with this information, will the people listen and migrate off TikTok and go to other platforms?
No.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
truth be damned.
Yes, we are emotionally obese and mentally diabetic, and that's just is what it is.
And
I'm
highly
going to use that.
addicted.
Thank you. Mentally
Uh,
diabetic.
yeah.
Yeah, give us that sweet, sweet dopamine-filled Oreo cookie TikTok dance videos, please. Can I get a double helping of twerking, please? So, the next big headline is, we covered the OnlyFans backing off. Okay, so the next one is South Korea will abolish a decade-old law that stops kids under 16 from playing online games between midnight and 6 a.m. after heavy criticism. So I wasn't aware of this. South Korea had a decades-old law that stops kids under 16 from playing games between midnight and 6 a.m., and now they're abolishing it. The government has decided to abolish the game curfew for children 10 years after the controversial rule was established as an outdated law. There you go.
How did they enforce it? That the parents will whistleblow?
I don't know.
Well, Korea, if you go back to World of Warcraft and things like that, suicide was on the rise, and kids were over 24 hours on the games in the little cafes. So they had a major social issue that they had to address. So that was a while ago.
Yeah. Yeah. They shut down those cafes, and at home they had penalties on parents, I think. I remember reading somewhere.
Okay, so the next article is an interesting one. A last mile delivery robot to your door, to your actual door. So this is a very small robot called Coco. Last mile delivery robot startup Coco raises $36 million, led by Sam Altman, Silicon Valley Bank Founders Fund, bringing the total to $43 million. LA delivery robot startup Coco this week announced their new fundraising. Now, those are very smart investors, and I will tweet this out so that you can see what this little Coco last mile delivery robot looks like, because it'll be rolling up on your doorstep any day now. And it looks clearly inspired by the Estonian one that both the Russians and Amazon clearly identically copied, shamefully, embarrassingly. This one is not a carbon copy. It actually has even stronger wheels. And it looks really cool, and it shows how it rolls up to you. It's about knee high, and the top opens up, and then it has a space inside of it for your delivery. It came out of UCLA, formerly known as Cyan Robotics. Is operating in a crowded field, including Starship, which is the Estonian one who really pioneered the space that I was talking about. And rather than pushing for full autonomy, Coco's solution utilizes remote drivers, which are a more popular solution than many companies care to admit. Oh, artificial intelligence. I know how that works. You're not even clearly sharing the fact that this is a human-driven device. You're giving people the impression that it's an autonomous vehicle. It's not. It's human-powered remotely. That's called artificial intelligence to a degree, jokingly. So the Coco is still young. It launched February 2020. The company currently has a headcount of 120 and plans to grow to over 1,000 by the end of the year, as the pandemic continues to fuel additional interest in robotic deliveries. And the funding will go towards more hardware and additional city launches. Coco says it's been able to operate with a 97% on-time rate while reducing delivery times for its clients by around 30%. The company lacks a massive partner like Domino's, though California-based Umami Burger is probably the largest on the list of 18 restaurant partners currently listed on Coco's site. We are currently operating in Santa Monica and in 5 different LA neighborhoods, the company tells TechCrunch. Later this year, we are expanding into a number of other major U.S. cities. We have partnered with the national restaurant brands like SBE, Umami Burger, which my old buddy Brent Holberman, and are actively scaling across many locations, and we are serving a wide range of family-operated businesses like Bangkok West Thai in Santa Monica, where I used to order a lot of Thai food, and the San Pedro Brewing Company in Los Angeles. We are out of the pilot phase and are launching with dozens of new merchants every day. But this is the last mile to your door delivery bot, which you could fit a whole bunch of these inside of a van. And so when a van pulls up, this cute little sucker pops out like a child popping out of the mama and right up to the doorstep, or 1 block away. So take a look at it, because that really seems to be the future. And the fact that Sam Altman and Founders Fund backs it kind of helps confirm that notion. They seem to agree as well. So it's a cute little robot. So the next story is from USA Today, that researchers say that when Trump sends out a tweet, and that tweet is fact-checked by Twitter, where Twitter puts a label on his tweet saying this tweet might not be totally truthful. It might, in fact, be fake news. It turns out that those tweets that are labeled as potentially fake news spread further than the ones that aren't labeled. Say what? That's kind of counterintuitive. Twitter, assumingly, is putting that on there to kind of reduce the spread of it, because they're saying, hey, this tweet is not legit. This is bogus info. Yet the bogus info tweets that are marked as such have much more reach. Interestingly, that's what the research shows.
Not so interesting. I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think that this is just because the things that are tweeting that are likely to be fact checked are more salacious and therefore more spreadable?
Yes, I do think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, research supports that. So that's the Trump marketing, strategy, and so
the next
question is the algorithm, though, right? I mean, that's so. What are you going to do about that, Twitter? Everybody knows everybody knows that. So
right.
So Tyler, do you think they're going to release Trump's Twitter account, or they're not going to do that?
No, so we haven't covered this question in a minute. So let's circle back on this, which is Trump plans to run for president in the next presidential election. And when he runs as a candidate, there is a rule that publications must give equal airtime to political candidates. So one might argue, Trump's lawyers might argue, hey, you can't have Joe Biden have on your platform and not me. Although clearly Twitter would say we're not a publication. That doesn't apply to us. I would say in the spirit of the law, it does. I think in the spirit of the law, you do have to give equal access to platforms.
Well, equal airtime, Tyler, is about use of public airwaves for broadcasters.
Correct.
So it's more about public utility.
I understand.
Versus a private concern.
I very specifically said in the spirit of the law of they had no idea. The founding fathers didn't know what the fuck Facebook was, Evan. I think if they did, I think they would say presidential candidates, a platform, if they could imagine Facebook back in the 1800s, I think they would say, in the future, these platforms are going to be have far more reach than any publication or airwaves or whatnot. I think they would say
they had pamphlets, right? I mean, at the time they had hundreds of pamphlets they would distribute, which were like miniature Facebook posts they would all pass around.
Yeah, so Tyler, it is a good point about the FCC. It isn't, and it has to do with the fact when we have traditional television that was carried over airwaves that the networks got for free, they were able to subject them to some rules. So it's not about publications; it's only about the airwaves, and it doesn't even apply to cable news. It only applies to over-the-air signals. So it's a very limited,
Yes,
yeah.
It's basically radio now.
Yeah,
I think corporate. I don't know. I think the corporate personhood totally applies here. If I can set up a business and deny health care to women, right, just because of my personal whatever, I think that Twitter can certainly say, you know what, no, this is my corporate person expression,
Okay.
and just kind of draw a line.
So this isn't even the main point I want to make. The main point I want to make is, let's say that the platforms don't let Trump on. I think that's a safe assumption, right? So Twitter and Facebook and YouTube aren't going to let Trump on, even though he's going to claim you have to give me equal airtime, quote unquote. And they're going to say, no, we're not the FCC. That's as you guys just said, that doesn't apply to us. I agree. That's what's going to happen. Now, in the face of that, what happens if he wins? Because, make no mistake, he very nearly won last time. Far too close for many people's comfort. It is totally possible, given how close the last election was, that he could win. And what happens if he does to Facebook and Twitter and all of those platforms that previously deplatformed him?
There's another issue whether he runs or not, because he might end up getting indicted before the election anyway. But I think in the minds of many Americans, not all, but many, the idea, whatever and I know you've spoken about this, Tyler, many times, and I understand where Jack Dorsey's coming from. The concept of the Taliban being allowed on Facebook and not Trump is not going to sit well with a very large part of America. You just cannot explain it to them. They will not care about Dorsey's explanation about Twitter rules. I mean, you're talking about people that were responsible for for killing 3,000 Americans in 9/11. I mean, and you're going to say that the 45th president of the United States can't get on? That's just and I'm not even a Trump fan. I don't even like Trump. I'm just saying. It's just going to be unacceptable for a good part of this country,
Yeah.
and you're going to see some sort of congressional reaction to that.
Yep. Yeah, they got to walk that spot very
Tyler,
carefully. Yes. Go ahead.
I think it's more fundamental than that.
Uh-huh.
If we say we are a liberal country, whether it's UK or US, we have to give people the platform, because now Twitter is a platform, right? Clubhouse is a platform for for politicians to communicate with the masses. So I think we just have to, as long as they don't incite violence, they should be given the space. And whether we like them or not, it doesn't matter.
But he did, right? He did incite violence, right? That's why it was suspended.
According to Twitter, he did. And Twitter says that they banned him because of 2 tweets. They put out a blog post on January 8th, 2 days after the incident at the Capitol, saying these 2 tweets violate our policies. And so we are removing him from our platform. It had nothing to do with his speech prior to what happened at the Capitol. Had nothing to do with anything else he ever did in life. It has only to do with these 2 tweets that he twatted on Twitter.
But you can't ban him forever. I mean,
yeah, they can. They said
I know they can, but
yeah.
But
I mean,
should they?
hey, I think we're forgetting that these are private companies.
Right.
It's not like this is a government institution. They can do what they want with their platform. It's in the terms and conditions. Private companies are not beholden to freedom of speech. It's plain and simple.
I agree with you.
He's dealing with the consequence of it. That's all plain
private
and simple.
companies have to follow. So as Tyler was saying, if Trump was to win, he can change the law. If so it's a question of you can have private company, but private company and government is very different. But this is one thing billionaires need to realize: the politicians have more power than they have.
It's going to end up in the Supreme Court. I mean, the Supreme Court's going to have to pick a case that represents this issue, and they're going to have the ultimate say. No one else.
Yeah, but it's also a slippery slope. If you start treating entities as if they're individuals, then that's going to open up a whole can of worms. That happened with the whole healthcare situation with, what was the name? Hobby Lobby, or Lobby Hobby, whatever that name it is, with abortion. If you start treating entities as if they're individuals, then that's a slippery slope towards, the dampening of what our society is, or what the Constitution is supposed to stand for. This period.
Where are our attorney friends? I thought that there was some entity given to companies. Like they are treated as like a civilian.
Corporate personhood.
There's a
Yes,
litany of
Yeah.
corporate
cases.
personhood, but that's pertaining towards something else.
There's a litany of cases about corporations having free speech rights like individuals. A litany of cases, by the way, on that. Yeah.
But they are under the context that the corporation, and that was a big change, maybe even a couple decades ago. So it's given rise to a huge issue with many who believe that corporations need to be checked because they're obviously not a
Right.
person. It was a well. I'll be quiet. There's a bunch of lawyers here on that stage.
Yeah. I actually pinged some in that actually are Constitution lawyers. So let me see if they show up.
Okay, so let's get, while we wait for them, there's a bunch more stories to get into. Like this one, as from the Wall Street Journal, as studios lean into simultaneous theater and streaming releases, which, yeah, their movies are now simultaneously being released into movie theaters and on Netflix. High quality privated versions of movies are hitting piracy sites within hours of their release.
Just let me clarify. It's not on Netflix. It's on every streamer but Netflix.
Well,
So it's the studios that have streaming services.
I'm using Netflix in the same way we say jacuzzi and Kleenex. Which,
okay, all right, okay. I just wanted.
Yeah, it's almost like, in parts of America they say Coke when they actually mean Pepsi, and soda or
Xerox.
Yes. So
the HBO and Disney will be very upset with you, Tyler.
I'm sure they will be, but in fact, it's Netflix who loses their trademark in my doing that. But the point is that now, because they're going digital with these very early simultaneous to the theater screenings, it really it creates a scenario where pirates can make very perfect copies and put them on the Pirate Bay, which, by the way, still exists. They couldn't figure out how to shut it down. That will become very important later in reference to Bitcoin. If the government should ever try to shut down Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency, there are very few websites that have been able to stand the full wrath of the American and international community. So, but the Pirate Bay is one such entity. And so it will be interesting to see if people start turning back to it as a source for these videos. So,
but one thing you have to remember, Tyler, about mostly using Netflix as an example, as most of these streaming services, with the exception of something like Black Widow or Milan, where they had an upcharge or something, because you're paying a flat monthly fee, there's no reason to steal it because you're already paying for the subscription.
Correct.
So you get it anyway. Yeah.
Correct. But then, the question becomes, should they be that worried about the pirated videos if it? You know what they should do? The studios should start leaking the first half of the movie themselves onto the Pirate Bay and get people very upset that the video ends halfway and then there's a little commercial. Yeah, hey, that's too bad you couldn't afford the movie. Sign up now for a Netflix account. And
diabolical.
Yeah. So the next article is a deep look at why expanding into gaming is so important to Netflix. Speak of the devil. The competition it faces from games like Fortnite and what its current strategy looks like. And so I'm going to tweet that out because it's like it says itself. It's a deep dive story. And indeed, we know they're getting into games because we saw their job listings months ago that they were hiring for somebody to run a games division inside of Netflix. So, and it is a super competitive space, but they've got a whole lot of eyeballs who keep, when they're bored, they open Netflix, and giving them video game options could be very interesting, especially if they put an ad network inside of that. The next one is like Cammy's.
I think Farina has a hot mic.
A few people got some hot mics, so we're just muting a few mics. So the next one is this one is brand new from the Financial Times. It says UK's FCA says it is not capable of overseeing Binance despite significant risk posed by its product after Binance refused to answer basic questions. The company's UK affiliate refused to respond to basic questions, says British regulator. Do any of our British friends or crypto friends have a comment on that? Okay. So the next one is from TechCrunch, a company called Notic, which builds software for HR departments, comes out of stealth with 800 or 180 million from Excel. And the next interesting one here, let's see, Hunters, detection response. Okay, a whole bunch of companies getting fundraising. An Indian e-commerce logistics company called Delhivery acquires Bengaluru-based Spotin Logistics for 300 million in cash before an IPO. Following OpenAI's GPT-3, startups in China, South Korea, Israel, and Germany are building general-purpose AI language tools for non-English languages. Okay, and another one here, interview with Discord CEO Jason Citron, who says user numbers doubled and revenue tripled in 2020. And Discord is developing its own in-house games. That's wild because Discord is where gamers go to have real-time conversations. Think of it as Clubhouse for video games, where instead of talking about news headlines, we would be playing video games together. That's what Discord is, essentially. And so now they're going to get into making their own actual games. Of course, they can have a good distribute. They have a huge loyal audience of gamers. So why not? Makes a lot of sense.
They actually, Tyler, just to let you know, they actually have, because I'm a gamer, they actually have games built into the Discord already, and they're called bots. They have some for crypto, they have some for education. So, yeah, they're already doing it just on a different type of scale, and it's a different type of delivery mechanism.
Okay. So about harmful use of FBI says a man phished thousands of Apple iCloud accounts via an email scam where he impersonated Apple customer support, stealing 620,000 photos and 9,000 videos. And he was doing it on the behalf, he was marketing his services saying, would you like me to hack into somebody's account and get their photos if they're an Apple user? And then he did. And then he would share the photos with those people who wanted the original photos. There was a lot of nude photos. That was what they were really searching for. They were targeting young women and then getting the nude photos, sharing them in the dark web, or in some places it got put on porn websites. And that's how he eventually got caught. Was one of the people he hacked was a sort of celebrity. And the people saw this celebrity's nude photos on this porn site and said, how the hell did these photos get on this website? And then they found out she was hacked. No surprise. And then they found out who hacked her. And that's how he hacked the wrong person. So the next one's really interesting. A look at a group called the Belarusian Cyber Partitions, a hacking group that has released a huge data trove, including from government and police, to undermine their kind of authoritarian leader who's overstaying his welcome, Lukashenko. And they are basically really making life very uncomfortable for Lukashenko. They also obtained mortality statistics indicating that thousands more people in Belarus died from COVID than the government has officially published. Video footage from police drones and detention centers, and they've hacked and sabotaged 240 surveillance cameras in Belarus. And the group has penetrated some of the most secret government databases in the country, obtaining a huge trove of recordings from the government wiretapping systems that intercepted phone calls, personal info on top government officials and spies, a list of informants who reported activities to police, etc. And now they're saying they're going to shut down the government's tech infrastructure.
Love this. Oh, I love this. I mean, Belarus is a very sophisticated tech community.
My own tech team was Russians working out of Minsk, Belarus, and Belarus has some of the best hackers in the world. So the point for the cultural context, there was an election. When was this? 4 months ago, and Lukashenko, the people of Belarus largely believe he rigged the election, and they don't agree with the results at all. and yet he's refusing to leave or do a recount or anything like that. So they're doing these incredibly massive protests. And as you can imagine, the Lukashenko regime is cracking down very hard on these protests. And so it's very interesting to see that now the hackers might have play a key role in getting Lukashenko out of power by shutting down the government infrastructure and all of the tech. They can essentially slowly infiltrate every aspect of the government's computer systems and networks, and then literally pull the plug on it, literally shut it down, turn them into bricks. And then what can the government do when the protests start then? So the next big article is just a simple one that a test across U.S. mobile carriers for who has the best 5G. T-Mobile wins with winning the speed test in 24 cities. AT&T won in 8 cities. Verizon won in 2 cities. And my favorite headline of today is from the New York Times and others that TikTok partners with Shopify. Did you hear that sound? Did somebody hear a sound? I heard a sound. Sounded like a... Did somebody hear...
Second island?
Did somebody...
A third island for you, Tyler?
Did somebody hear me buying a new island? Did you hear that sound?
Yep. Somebody have vested interest.
That's the sound of somebody who put a whole lot of money in Shopify, who's very happy about the fact that they've partnered with TikTok to expand into a new pilot program, letting merchants add a shopping tab on their profiles and link to products in their posts. And go Shopify, go. You go, girl. I love you, Shopify. Toby, you're doing a hell of a job, buddy. And keep that rocket rolling. So those are your biggest headlines of Wednesday, August 25th. However, those are not the interesting headlines. Not at all. Not even close. The interesting headlines are the ones that we, as the Geeks Around the World, have been sharing via Twitter, which I will share with you now. And thank you to everyone who's tweeting these in, and I will retweet them out to our Twitter account at TNATW as we read each of these. So somebody sent in this one from The Verge, that Apple employees are now organizing. I told you these were more interesting. If Apple employees unionize, that's quite wild. And there were hints of this in that they wrote a signature collection when Antonio was being recruited to be kind of their new ad network guru. And a bunch of Apple team members put a bunch of signatures together to say, we don't want to work with him at Apple. And so when he sold his house, he relocated. And when he shows up for work, they said, actually, on second thought, we're retracting our job offer. And he says, say what? I just sold my house and moved across the country. And I found a place to live, and I'm here now, reporting for duty. And they said, yeah, but we have a bunch of team members who collected some signatures, and they said they don't feel comfortable about a couple sentences he wrote in a book, a New York Times bestseller 5 years ago. He says, well, say what? You have...
But I have a family. I have a family, Tyler.
Oh, my God. We'll get to that, Chris. And to which he says, you have Dr. Dre as a super top advisor. He wrote songs about banging hoes into the late in the night, and you're not going to let me in because of a paragraph I wrote in a New York Times bestseller 5 years ago? And you got Dr. Dre talking about beating bitches, and you're not going to let me work here? And he's super senior, like super, super senior in the organization, and you're not going to let me have a desk in the corner. So he obviously got a little, got his feathers ruffled, but that was an interesting scenario. It was notably one of the first publicly known cases of Apple team members kind of putting together kind of a collective force. And then they did it again when Tim Cook announced, you're all coming back to the office in September. And they wrote letters saying, no, we're not, Tim, Uncle Timmy. We love you, but we're going to work from home, Timmy. And then, Delta came along, and it's a whole other story. And now the headline from The Verge says Apple employees are organizing now under a banner, #Apple2. We've exhausted all internal avenues, they say. And the story says Apple employees organizing took another step this morning with the launch of a website called Apple2, which you can go to. It's apple2.us, US, or us, apple2.us. The goal is to collect stories from workers at all levels of the organization who've experienced harassment or discrimination. Sound kind of familiar? Sound kind of like the Activision Blizzard story? Collecting of stories and signatures of disgruntled employees. This is the makings of unions. This is how it starts. This is step one, how to make a union. Get all of your employees who are disgruntled to sign a letter and get them to tell their stories. Hopefully their stories include illegal activities by the company. And so they've made a website where you can share your story. And indeed, there's quotes on the website from the National Labor Relations Board and the U.S. Equity Employment Opportunity Commission and the Department of Fair Unemployment and Housing, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's not a coincidence that they have all of these quotes from all of these kind of union-related agencies on the front of the website. It says, the website says, it's time to think different. For too long, Apple has evaded public scrutiny, and we're exhausted all internal avenues. We talked with our leadership. We've gone to the people team, and we've escalated through business conduct. Nothing has changed. It's time to think different. Badoom, psh. That's Apple's traditional marketing phrase. And a group of Apple workers have joined together to organize and protect ourselves. We are asking fellow Apple workers who want to see real change at Apple to share their stories. When our stories are collected and presented together, they help expose persistent patterns of racism, sexism, inequality, discrimination, intimidation, suppression, coercion, abuse, unfair punishment, and unchecked privilege. We must work together as colleagues, corporate, AppleCare, and retail, salaried and hourly, part-time and full-time, on demand systemic change in our workplace. We all share a spot in directory, which is the big phone book of employees, and yet we don't share the same treatment and aren't given equal rights. Yeah, because you actually have different levels of responsibility and pay, and some of you are not even full employees. You're part-time. Some of them are not even actual employees. You're contractors. So, of course, you're not going to have equal rights. So, connect with us to share your own experience, to stay informed, or unite in solidarity with other current and former Apple workers. United, we can collaborate to iterate a healthier workplace. We are working together to craft a statement on our behalf, reflecting our stories and an outline of changes we expect to see Apple make. Follow along on Twitter, where they have a Twitter account, which is twitter.com/Apple Laborers. And they are up to 2,100 followers, and they've done an astounding 31 tweets. So, and you can read those tweets there and help them spread their campaign to unionize.
So Tyler,
yes,
I think they're going to, I'm sorry, there might be lawyers in the room, but I think they're going to take down this website because isn't Apple II trademarked? The name?
Great question.
Yeah. I don't know about that one, but I just want to add at some stage, companies like Apple and others, employee activism is great, but if employee activism is I don't know. I mean, whoever is their chief HR officer, I think Deidre is from retail. She took over HR, but they're having sleepless nights. I mean, at some stage they're going to say, "You're here to work, and this is all a huge distraction. You're out of here," or they're going to start looking at their policies and everything like that. I mean, otherwise this is a slippery slope, you know.
Speaking on behalf of the 20th century and the value of unions to maintain a vibrant middle class, this will grow. Tech birthed the gig economy, which pushed healthcare costs onto the public sector, and so the challenge and problem is we have a Supreme Court that is anti-union. So this is helpful to just remind people about certain fair practices in the workplace. The bigger issue is that this is Apple, right? They do have a bunch of different job classifications, like Tyler was mentioning, in terms of just where you are in the company. But there is a larger picture here with regards to other, companies and industries that have just, there's been a just a devastation of unions and the working conditions. There's not a lot of protective measures there. So it's
I
good.
agree. I actually agree with you, Dave. And there's a great irony here that Apple is one of the most left or Democrat leaning companies in the world in terms of their political views and individually very left leaning, and yet they're coming out as very anti-union, which is not a left liberal sensibility. So go figure that someone like Tim Cook, who's left leaning on every other issue, all of a sudden doesn't like unions. So the great irony.
And he's silent too, right? Because he's got a personal brand, so he's not wading in yet. I think so. In another context of ESG and kind of just financial metrics used on valuation, it will be interesting to see how big tech handles this type of these union efforts.
So there's somebody we should also mention.
I would just say, I think the tech companies are trying not to be General Motors, so that they don't end up having to pay employees to play Trivial Pursuit, because that's the end road when you deal with unions. By the way, you end up paying employees whether they're working or not to play Trivial Pursuit.
So there's we should mention Apple's very unique company culture, which evolved directly from Steve Jobs, which had a tremendous influence on the company culture. And we could, if Sid would care to comment, Sid normally joins us in the audience, and just noticed some friends with their hands up. Sorry, guys. And, but yeah, I mean, I have a lot of friends who have worked at Apple over the years. And in fact, the CEO of Apple Music, Ian, is a dear friend of mine. So they have, an incredibly unique culture, which is notoriously hardworking, notoriously secretive, and notoriously competitive and intense, and especially in the early days of Apple, but it still exists today. And in some part, I imagine, I think part of this comes down to really the setting the expectation of tech. I think people get jobs. I imagine the people who are behind this campaign are newer employees at Apple, first of all, and I imagine they feel they're not getting what they signed up for. It doesn't match what they assumed. They had a vision of what it was going to be like to work at Apple, and then they get there and it's not what they thought it would be. And it's much, negatively so. And so they're disgruntled, and I don't begrudge them that. What I would say is, I think Apple and any company needs to be very careful. Tech companies need to be particularly careful to outline just how difficult it is to work at a tech company. It's not like working at Starbucks. Not at all. Not even close. It's not at all like a normal non-tech job of any kind, like with the exception of Wall Street bankers, perhaps. So, which are also notorious.
Tyler, even the retail side, which only gets retail wages, is notoriously difficult place to work, very demanding.
Yeah, but I think
long hours. So maybe it's more on the retail side that's coming up.
I'll even go so far as to fault Apple. I bet Apple isn't really outlining just how challenging it is, and that's why in more recent years. And I think that's why you're going to start seeing disgruntled folks at tech companies, because this real hardcore startups generally do. It's pretty obvious that a startup is absolute chaos, utter chaos. It's like being in a tornado.
Yeah.
So
literally Monday, you can have all-time high win, and by Friday you're like, I'm ready to quit. And throughout the ride, you've been through 6 or 7 peaks. It's such a crazy journey.
And there's
Tyler, so I worked at Apple in the Scully days, but I also worked at HP in the '80s and at Sun, and a gazillion startups. Right, the big tech, as much as people on the outside tend to think that they operate like startups, they don't. Full stop. You'll have a bunch of groups that are doing some of the sexy stuff that, based on their immediate management, might be pressure cookers to a degree. But those people that are working in the pressure cookers, if they aren't into it, they'll often just try to find another place and land somewhere else in the company, right? So I just to be really clear, I mean, Apple does have It's not. It's not. The cell phone, the iPhone is most of the business these days, right? So and the customer service and the retail, as was mentioned, it's it's a big, huge company that there are going to be pockets of it that need just more attention in terms of allowing the or just managing the managers is probably the better way to put it, because it's not everybody at Apple is in this like startup. That's the full stop. Just not true.
No,
There will be
I don't know
pockets.
who's claiming that it is.
No. I'm not saying you were claiming that. But that's what kind of people outside tech sometimes think, though. That's all.
Yeah, maybe. But I think there's a miss. If there was a way for the company to give a much better, clearer indication of what it's like and their own weaknesses and how you're likely to not be a good fit and how you're likely to just be very transparent about here's all the ways we think you could potentially not like working here. And here's a dozen of them. And here's of the past 100 people who left or were fired, here's what happens when people aren't happy here, and here's what I don't like. Go through that process so that people have a much more realistic sense of what they're getting into. Anyway,
But
that would be
Tyler,
helpful.
just a quick thing, right? If you really think about connecting the dots, right? You've got big tech getting hammered from the external environment, the government, and all other agencies. You've got now these big tech getting hammered internally from employees who are becoming much more active, militant, etc. Is the future of big tech in question, and is it just agile startups? And the minute they start going big, there's
great
time for them.
question. It's a great question because we as geeks know, Silicon Valley knows, this is part of the process. Is companies get too big, they get too slow, they lose their agility. Jeff Bezos of all is hyper aware of this. That it's hard. His challenge is going to be staying agile as they grow to scale. And they know that. Every Amazon employee knows that. They're very conscious of that because they know what will kill them is a startup that can outmaneuver them.
Yeah, and I tweeted an article to you some while ago. We just had in India the big Republic Day, Independence Day sale, and every year Flipkart and Amazon announce how many millions and hundreds of millions of dollars of sales they've had. This year, they're very, very low key. They've not announced anything. They've just said, it's been an okay year, no numbers, because they're under tremendous pressure from government, lawsuits on deep discounting and all of that. So they're keeping, for the first time, I know friends who are not applying to Amazon and Flipkart because they just don't want to go to these big companies.
One other thing. There was also, we should bring in Zappos into this conversation. And Tony, rest in peace, man. Tony created with Zappos a truly magically scenario where both the users of Zappos were delighted, even more delighted than using Amazon, even though the price was even slightly higher. And the team members were also notably loving working there. And and they were starting to compete with Amazon. They started off with shoes, just like Amazon started with books, and then they were getting into all other stuff. And that's when Amazon thought, oh shit, here comes our worst nightmare. A startup where the users actually love the platform more than they love Amazon, and the team members like working there more than the team members like working at Amazon. So they bought Zappos. They didn't have a choice because that could have been the existential threat for Amazon, honestly. So anyway.
That's a great example, Tyler. That is like such the perfect example with regards to showing the culture that you run in-house, as well as it reflect to your customers in your brand, has so much benefit and power. And I just like to simply put, every time we hear about the whining FANG companies with these types of issues, it reminds me and it breaks my heart about what happened to Hewlett Packard and how Carly Fiorina came in and basically killed the spirit. Okay, so culture, a lot of that is managed from the top. And I've had conversations with people, related to the Packards and all that. It was just such a heartbreak because the culture of HP prior to those times was it's kind of like the Zappos. It was just a great place to work and more of a place of empowerment and things like that. It was different times though too. So I'll give you all of that. But
Oh,
I just say briefly that it underscores the link between employee centricity and customer centricity. So if you get the employee piece right and people are engaged and they feel valued and you take care of the people who, you just come into the assumption that the people that we hire, they want to be with us and we're going to create opportunities for them to do their best, then they're going to serve the customer that much better. So I agree with what you were saying, David. And, I think that there's opportunity for more workplaces to incorporate that kind of value system.
hey,
friends of
this
mine
is.
and I, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Oh no, I wanted to say I was just going to quickly piggyback on Lakeisha because I actually interviewed for several of those places. I mean, most companies aren't going to like spin it in a negative way to say what the negatives are a company is about, and I think it's kind of up to the individual to do their research about an organization. There's several websites like Glassdoor and stuff like that where they talk about company culture and stuff. And I know for sure Amazon has something called, I think it's called Smart or whatever. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but they talk about their values and their passion for their customer. So maybe they can revamp it to be a little bit more, I don't want to say transparent. You just got to be able to read between the lines and understand the language, what they're talking about when they say they're passionate about their customer, meaning that you like you do take the initiative, you are assertive, that you go the extra mile when completing a task. They're looking, especially in tech, they're looking for certain type of individual self-starters. Nobody wants to micromanage anybody. And yeah, you do sell off a little bit of other things that you might be interested, but it's more about you as the individual, you researching the company and deciding on what you will and will not be willing to do. I mean, companies are in the interest of making money. I'm not saying that they shouldn't treat their employees better. They do have organizational management / change management organizations that go in and do top-down assessments and stuff. And of course, in all those assessments, the hardest thing to do is change the individual, change their mindset about how they work, how they see their coworkers and whatnot. But ultimately, it's up to the individual to decide how that environment's going to be and to move it forward. Yes, it's top down too. But also, I just know like from that, when you have like the internal support to move forward, it does make for a happier place. Just saying, because I've worked in government and at the World Bank and other private, and also in private institutions for what I've seen. Hi, thank you. That's all I'll
And
say.
Zappos would pay people to leave, so everyone, regardless of whether you're brought in as an exec or, a warehouse worker, everyone worked in the call center. So, I mean, that's the most basic touch point in terms of, learning to support and serve your customer and know kind of where the value within the organization lies. And after, the training period, they would check in with people and say, hey, to Elle's point, is this a fit? Because if it's not, we still value you and here's some money, you go about your way, and we wish you all the best. And I think that's part of it as well, so that if people spent a few weeks there and they thought, it's cool but it's not quite me, then they leave. But it's also a way of weeding out people who would probably not work in the long term. So I think there was a lot of intentionality in terms of how they created the employee centric culture, but then also made sure that everyone had basic customer service experiences, so that that permeated through the organization.
But there's a reality, though. I mean, the larger the organization, we talk about employee centricity, but they become system centric. Keeping that system alive, keeping the structure alive. And one of the trends I've noticed, because I'm in this space and there's been working with a lot of M&As, particularly, I won't say mergers, but a lot of acquisitions of small startups, agile startups by large companies. And one of the interesting things I've noticed is they're not rolling those startups in. They're keeping them as separate companies, separate spaces, and for much longer than they ever used to. And in fact, there are opportunities for people from the acquired company to go move into these smaller divisions, but more agile. which keeps its culture. Because the minute they go into this larger system, they'll get swallowed alive and it's gone and it becomes system centric. Even though we keep saying our system is meant to be employee centric, and then it just becomes whether we want to just tick the boxes of becoming a great place to work, and all of that stuff.
A line.
But just
I would. I'm sorry, Vinay. I would use line of business. What happens too? I was at Time Warner when I was at Atari Games. They were owned by Time Warner, and then at Sun Microsystems, where they had JavaSoft versus SME versus SMCC. The leaders of those different organizations they also express a very powerful subculture. It's probably a good way to describe it as well. And so I remember one of my research papers at business school was to compare and contrast my experience between Apple and HP, and then later working at Time Warner and Sun. You know, Al, you brought up a really great point with regards to no one wants to micromanage, but then just getting help from other entities within the organization. There's a whole cultural hurdle there on whether it's really something that the company can do a good job of getting the different divisions to work together, or if there's more of a, like at Time Warner, the chieftains is literally, if you go do research on in Time Magazine, it was the music business versus film versus theme park stuff. They had very strong subcultures that really made it impossible at times to work across the organization. I'm David. I'm totally done speaking, Tyler.
Here
Sorry.
we go. No worries. So we have a whole bunch of really interesting headlines to get into on the topic of Apple. The Economist says today, in a story about Tim Cook's now his 10th year anniversary as taking over as CEO of Apple, and that no CEO in history has created as much total shareholder value as Tim Cook has. And the next one is from Forbes that the Indian government authorizes needle-free COVID vaccine. The DNA vaccine developed by Indian company Zydus Cadila is the second Indian-developed COVID vaccine to get a regulatory thumbs up, but with no needles necessary. The next one is from Poppy from the New York Times. The headline reads, "A shifting climate gave humans many opportunities to leave Africa. A new paleoclimate model finds many favorable windows when Homo sapiens might have survived a migration out of Africa." And I'm sending all of these to the Tech News Twitter account as I read them, as usual. So you can follow the Tech News Twitter account so you can always get these fun curated tech articles here, like this one from time.com that Poppy sent in about a refugee revisited his birth village during the pandemic after 73 years. Hari Krishnan Lal Anand fled his village in what is now Pakistan at age 16. Through virtual reality, he was able to go home one last time because there was a border drawn between Pakistan and India. It used to be a part of India. And so he's not able to go back there, but he can through VR. And his village is visitable through VR, which hopefully we will all be traveling VR in super hyper realistic ways in our own lifetime. That would be fantastic. And the Vinay from India is DMing me right now. How this one here? Go ahead, Vinay. What is this one from India today? Vinay?
Is it the China one?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's the article that talked about how China defeated a major COVID-19 Delta outbreak within a month, and how they completely shut down. There's supposedly only 30 cases or something in Wuhan,
Yes.
and they really pushed it down. And by the way, they've also kind of said that the WHO report is coming out. So they are now pushing it all. And the US is whitewashing COVID by blaming China. There's a lot of reports on that. Just came up 24 hours.
Has the Public of the People of China found the antidote to Delta variant of coronavirus? It is the only country that has, within 5 weeks, managed to stomp out a major Delta variant outbreak that too without a single death. Not just that, this is also around the 30th instance since the pandemic began out of Wuhan in early 2020 of China controlling an outbreak of COVID-19 and bringing infection figures down to zero. On July 20, 2021, airport cleaning staff in Nanjing in eastern China had tested positive for the Delta variant of COVID-19, and the infections had soon spread to 50 cities across 17 mainland provinces in China. The outbreak, according to Xinhua news agency, was controlled through resolute actions. That's kind of key, taking actions. You can't just talk it away, by the way. I know as much as Americans would prefer that we could talk this virus away, it actually doesn't work that way. This virus is very unique. You actually have to take actions, and including targeted lockdowns, travel restrictions, because this virus apparently travels geographically. It doesn't use teleportation. So it turns out that you can control, if you can find the location and the geography and then surround it, the perimeter, and lock that perimeter, you can actually stop it from growing. It's an amazing concept. And that's what they did.
Tyler, I've got a question. Can you be vaccine hesitant or vaccine anti-vaxxer in China?
I don't know.
I just wanted to ask that question. Wonder what's their vaccination rate and if their vaccination is working against Delta.
The New York Times has an article today on exactly that, where the Chinese government is going to, they were going to, what was the word? Accountable. They're going to hold those that are not getting the vaccine accountable. And they were saying specifically that there are citizens who are saying that it's against their free will. So
I'd be against their shitty vaccine too.
Well,
that's the unfortunate thing. If they'd only had an effective vaccine, they'd be doing everything right.
It says these measures included completely cutting off train and airplane services to some of the higher risk areas. Exactly. That's exactly how you stop it. Geographically. You fight the virus geographically. You find out where it is, and you don't let people in or out of that area until it's resolved in that area. And it only takes about 3 weeks in that area. And the sooner you can find it, the sooner you can contain it and stop all in and out of traffic of that area. In 3 weeks, it's back to a green area, and all life goes back to normal, as China just did. They just defeated Delta precisely in this way. Thailand was doing it that way previously. And due to getting hit from the Myanmar coup, sent just a few too many people scrambling over our 1,000-kilometer unprotected border with Myanmar, who all had all kinds of Delta. So they were coming in many different Thai towns simultaneously, making it very, very difficult to contain.
Imagine if you had islands you could seal off where people who were unvaccinated would go.
Yeah. So
well, Tyler, it was that, but then also it was the entertainment, the HISO entertainment centers,
yes,
if you will, where, the Japanese ambassadors and several high-level ministers were out for a night of entertainment, and they spread it to their embassies and to their children and the schools. And then the prime minister said, "Que sera, sera." And I don't know what it's like yet down there where you are, but, I came up to Bangkok for a couple of days, and I'm headed out tomorrow, 5 a.m. But I was shocked to see these food stations, throughout the city in all kinds of neighborhoods where people line up to get rice and, whatever hot dish they're serving, because it's just devastated people's lives. And I knew that, but, out in the village, I hadn't seen it to this extent, but people were lining up for, I don't know, probably in 20-minute lines just to get food. I mean, it's tragic to see what's happened.
Yeah, the cities are tough because you don't have abundant food growing everywhere in cities, although Bangkok kind of does. But you go outside of cities, Thailand becomes very farmlandish very quickly, and you're surrounded by food. So if you get out of Bangkok, you're not going to have any problem getting food. But if you're in Bangkok, it's such a metropolis that you have way more people than banana plants, and but the rest of Thailand's covered in banana plants. So anyway,
and you can't easily trade chickens or eggs or herbs with your neighbor, which is what happens in the village.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, I'll grow these 5 plants in my garden, and you have eggs, and then we'll order fish from the fishermen, and I have some mango trees and banana trees, and I mean that's enough to sustain people. But in the city, to your point, it's rough. It's rough.
So. And there's a lesson there for everybody as the apocalypse slowly begins. Anyway, so kudos to China for stopping Delta, it seems. So we will see if they in the near future, if that holds true.
One more piece. So Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand, she's not playing on this new strain either. So
right.
as soon as they had
One
a
case,
case, I mean, she locked the border. She was like, okay, we're back to square one.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be able to contain it as well.
Yep. And on the Eli, were you clapping or you want to jump in?
Clapping,
okay.
But Australia and New Zealand have been taking this seriously, whereas the rest of the Anglosphere has not.
Yeah. So
Australia, I just spoke with a buddy of mine who lives in Australia yesterday, and actually Delta's about to break loose, is his opinion, because I think it's New South Wales where Sydney is. It's more of a conservatively run state. He's in Melbourne, which is, I guess, Victoria, which is just north of that, or I kind of forget the name of that state. Queensland, sorry. They're concerned that it's going to be coming across the state border. So actually, they have enforcement on the state line border, but it's kind of seeping through the Delta, and it's already overrunning some of the hospitals apparently in Sydney. So keep an eye on Australia and how they manage that in the next few weeks.
Speaking of food shortages, the next headline is from the Times UK. Food shortages, the worst I've seen, says supermarket chief. And there's photos of supermarkets with nothing in them. Grocery shoppers face less choices as the boss of one of Britain's biggest supermarket chains said food shortages were the worst he has ever seen.
They ran out of ice cream at McDonald's.
That
terrible,
too.
terrible.
Yes,
tragic.
And there's some very funny cartoons being made about the McBrexit menu, which includes hamburgers with no meat called the McBun. And there's a chicken nuggets with no chicken nuggets, just an empty box. And anyway,
Tyler?
Yes.
Could I just circle back to the COVID for a second? Because I found some interesting statistics on the Dutch site. One of the things that they're doing here, which I'm not sure how many countries are doing this, they're actually testing the sewage water, and they're watching all of the data of the coronavirus particles. And per 100,000 people is very interesting, but it was actually up between 16 and the 22nd of August by 523.73. The Dutch are really about their statistics. And the largest variant by percentage, it's the Delta, 99.4%. So it's been really heavily here. But the interesting thing that you shared, one of the things about the Dutch is they really don't like being told what to do. And they don't like being locked down either. And ironically, the places that they travel to most frequently are those places that they've colonized in the past. So you find them a lot going to Southeast Asia, like when they go to Thailand and Bali, and also South Africa. And also they travel to France and Spain and Greece quite a lot. So they tend to pick these top 5 areas, which ironically, those are also the places where you're seeing outbreaks. And they have increased doses that have been administered in since 23rd. Looks like they've already administered over 22 million doses since as of August 23rd. So it looks like they're administering more doses to people, but they're not really I guess they're not really saying it, but the deaths are down, and they definitely said that the most detected variant for August has been the Delta variant. So it looks like the past 5 weeks, that is exactly what's been here. But the alpha has been the one that's 1.1 and gamma has been 0.2. Beta and other variants are rarely here.
Okay. So we have a new headline from South China Morning Post in China. The headline reads, hundreds quarantined in Shanghai as China nears 2 billion COVID vaccine doses. Fresh coronavirus cases emerge among fully vaccinated hospital and airport workers. Infections show the need to guard against complacency, city's health chief says. China has administered 2 billion doses of coronavirus vaccine, but an outbreak of cases in Shanghai has fanned fresh concerns about the spread of the disease and forced hundreds of people into quarantine, according to the National Health Commission. So a little.
We talked about this before, didn't we? COVID in the airport.
Yeah.
Oh, that was Nanjing.
Yeah, the source of Delta was the Nanjing, but we're getting conflicting reports about China.
And exactly, Tyler. Oh, sorry to interrupt. there is a little piece that's interesting that the Dutch are talking about as well, and I think it's going to sew into this where there's children, is that there's a number of parents that are just getting up in arms about the fact that ventilation is not that good inside the school systems, and that if you really want to sort of be able to manage this too, you need to have good ventilation. And much of these schools do not have that, and they are going back to school in like a few days. So it'll be very interesting to see.
Amy, but kids getting vaccinated is just an.
Oh, no. Of course, Professor Asif. The main thing is that they go home to their parents, and then the parents are with them.
But vaccination doesn't prevent infection.
Yeah, but ventilation if you're having a more festering situation, then wouldn't that be a challenge as well if there's not good ventilation?
Okay, the kids in Singapore have been going to school, they just wear masks.
Okay,
exactly.
So this headline now coming in from Taiwan. Taiwan reports no new domestic COVID-19 cases, first time since May 9th. Taiwan reported 0 new domestic COVID-19 cases on Wednesday, the first time since May 9th. So they've had domestic cases. Today was the first day that they didn't have any new cases. It has logged no community transmissions, with the pandemic on the democratically ruled island now well under control. I love how they mention they're a democratically ruled island as part of this article. They don't want you to forget that one. The number of COVID-19 cases in Taiwan began climbing in mid-May with the success of those restrictions. Border controls and quarantines for all arrivals have been strengthened, etc., etc. So, Taiwan
they mentioned the democracy because there's this common trope, which is of course ignorant of the fact that the only reason China is so successful at controlling it is because they're authoritarian and they can violate everybody's rights, and that's why we can't do what they're doing here. But that's not true.
Well, also it's because China says itself, we are the ones who can control this and no one else can. And Taiwan's like, listen, we're a democracy and we can control it. So stop claiming that it's your communism that enables you to do this.
It was SARS experience, SARS-1 experience. I remember going down there, however long ago that was, and the culture, who were just they culturally are very thoughtful of each other, but then just wearing a mask, they've been doing it for years now.
Tyler, I think we all have to learn to live with it. That's what the message needs to be. You've got to learn to live with it. Yes, you'll get infected, but you won't die if you're vaccinated. And it's about dying and severe illness that can be minimized by vaccination. And there will be a pill. Next year, we will have a pill just like antibiotics. There'll be antiviral, and that's what we will be taking and living a normal life. Can't wait to get back to normality.
So the South China Morning Post also just sent in this one, that China steps up criticism of anti-science U.S. over COVID-19 origins. Foreign Minister Wang Yi says the report, due to be released this week, will serve Washington's political purposes. Joe Biden ordered the intelligence services to carry out the investigation due to concerns about the WHO's initial investigation into Wuhan. And so China has stepped up its criticism of the U.S. over an intelligence service report into the origins of COVID-19, insisting it will be used as a political weapon. In a phone call with the Dutch counterpart on Tuesday, Chinese foreign minister said the report was bound to serve its own political purposes and severely interfere with international anti-pandemic cooperation. He said the U.S. was anti-science because it has ignored and abandoned the research report worked out by the WHO experts. There you go. So,
I just got the article. The first paragraphs, right? The classified U.S. intelligence report delivered to the White House on Tuesday was inconclusive on the origins of COVID-19 pandemic, in part due to a lack of information from China.
Okay. So now we do have the report, and it revealed nothing. And then Vinay, you just sent this one in about crypto in China. The court in China rules crypto is not protected by law. A court in China ruled that cryptocurrency investments are not protected by law. Yunnan authorities barred hydropower plants from supplying power to crypto miners. And That's what you need to know right there. So the next one, keeping it on the
So
China.
that's, by the way, Tyler, that's the brilliant strategy to shut off non-Chinese, crypto, so that their digital yuan can just take its place, right?
Right.
Don't give any alternatives.
Correct. You cannot compete with the state's digital currency. Exactly. And then BB sends in this one from the BBC that China schools now will be introducing into their curriculum what they call Xi Jinping thought. And that's obviously English, but in Chinese it has much more stronger meaning, because the only time historically that they've used this phrasing of like Xi Jinping thought was in two cases previously of Chairman Mao's thought and Deng Xiaoping's thought. So Uncle Xi is putting himself on the highest pedestals of Chairman Mao and the former leader Deng Xiaoping by now enforcing Chinese students to introduce political ideology of the Chinese president in its national curriculum. Xi Jinping thought will help teenagers establish Marxist beliefs, said the Ministry of Education in their new guidelines. The ideology will be integrated from primary school up to university, so your entire learning life. This is the latest effort by Mr. Xi to consolidate the ruling Chinese Communist Party's role in different areas of society. In a statement, the Ministry of Education said it aimed to cultivate the builders and successors of socialism with an all-round moral, intellectual, physical, and aesthetic grounding. The guidelines include labor education to cultivate their hardworking spirit, because China's going through... That's an interesting point, because China's perhaps biggest issue other than COVID is the fact that Chinese people are laying flat and refusing to work post-COVID. So this comes at a really interesting time, and probably also why they're banning video games as well. So
Tyler, I wanted to say something.
Yeah.
I just read an article. I put it on your DM. It's oil tanker. Iran using drones to strike. The oil price is going up, as you know.
Is this breaking news?
Yeah, I mean, I just put it. I mean, it was Israel's defense chief has just said that Iran was using drones to attack the oil tanker last month.
Iran and Hezbollah ship fuel to Lebanon, defying sanctions. Hezbollah says Iran fuel tanker to sail to Lebanon. Hold on, let me take out the word Lebanon in this search. Iran oil tanker, or which search should I be looking for?
I've just put it to Tech News Around the World direct message to you.
Okay. Let me find that, because this gets very interesting. Any news about oil tankers is going to get really interesting very soon. I'll explain why in a minute. Okay, Israel defense chief says Iran launched drone strike on tanker. So we covered this story when it was breaking news a couple weeks ago on July 29th. So about 3 weeks ago, there was an attack on an oil tanker in the Persian Gulf off the coast of Oman, as I recall. And it happened to be that the oil tanker happened to be owned by but Israel's wealthiest individual. And it was assumed that it was a drone that attacked it and kind of made it, forced it, kind of decommissioned it. And it was assumed that Iran was behind it. And now Iran, the new headline right now from AP News is Israel's defense chief says Iran launched drone strike on tanker. Israel's defense minister on Wednesday accused Iran of launching a deadly drone strike on an oil tanker last month from its territory. And because where it got struck in Oman is just a few kilometers away, right there at the Strait of Hormuz, is it? Just at the end where the Persian Gulf meets the Arabian Sea, right there on the tip of Oman. So, Iran is right there. I mean, it's in viewable distance, this oil tanker, as it was passing right there. So the oil tanker, they launched the drone from its territory of Iran and reiterated that Israel would act alone if needed to stop Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. Benny Gantz spoke as Israel Prime Minister Bennett was visiting Washington to discuss Iran and Biden administration officials during his first state visit in Washington. The Mercer Street, an oil tanker that was sailing in the Arabian Sea off Oman, was struck by a drone aircraft on July 29th. The attack killed 2, a British national and a Romanian. The tanker is managed by a firm owned by an Israeli billionaire. And that's why Israel even gives a shit. They wouldn't give a shit otherwise. If this was like a non-Israeli oil tanker, they would not give a shit. And nor would Iran likely give a shit. So this is the United States, Britain, and Israel have all blamed Iran for the drone strike on the Mercer Street, but no country has yet offered evidence or intelligence to support their claims. Iran has denied any wrongdoing. Our assessment is that the UAV employed which is an unidentified aerial vehicle, meaning a drone, employed in the Mercer Street attack was launched from Iranian territory and was approved by Iranian leadership. Okay, how are you going to prove that? Gantz told foreign diplomats in the briefing. His remarks were released by his office. Gantz, a former Israeli army chief, has previously warned that Israel is prepared to take military action against Iran and called for international action to halt Iranian aggressions. The two countries have been locked in a shadow war for years. Blah, 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 blah. So why this is so interesting is because the Persian Gulf, where you have the Emiratis and you have Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Iran, all right up in there. And that is a huge part of the world's energy in the form of oil. China alone gets half of its energy from the Persian Gulf, meaning they have oil tankers constantly going from the Persian Gulf down around India, around Sri Lanka, over to the Straits of Malacca, around Singapore, up to Beijing. In the process of doing that, notice I mentioned they had to pass out of the Persian Gulf into the Arabian Sea, which is the Straits of Hormuz, right in between Oman and Iran. And Iran, it's a tiny little sliver that they have to navigate through. And Iran, if they wanted to, could use drones to attack oil tankers going through there. And they're not the only ones who could. Lots of people could from either side. So oil tankers are very difficult to protect, and they contain billions of dollars of inventory. And a drone could take them out. A $200 fucking drone with $50 of explosives. So, as this one nearly did. And now you understand how nervous the world is that gets their oil from the Middle East, which the U.S. no longer does. And the U.S. is no longer interested in being the policeman for all the oil tankers going around all over the planet, especially China's. And now you know why China is shitting themselves and why they are in an absolute mad rush to build aircraft carriers and a navy to protect their own oil tankers. Because America's about to say, you're on your own. And especially if China tries to do any kind of attacks on Taiwan, then for sure China will have to secure its own, not only its own oil tanker shipments, which is nearly impossible to do, but all of their shipments of all of their containers, which is their entire economy. So why we say this is because there's a headline today that China has using their very large scale ferries, which can hold thousands of people and cars. These ferries are used to transport semi trucks and delivery trucks and cars of all kinds internationally. And they are now, Taiwan is reporting that China is using these large ferries. They're using them in military drills today and off the coast of Taiwan, because it's already kind of understood and accepted and known that China would need to do the largest land invasion in all of history. It would make D-Day in World War II look small by comparison. They would need to send tens of thousands of their officers, which they have, but they would need to bring them over on these large ferry ships. So the fact that Taiwan knows that, and Taiwan's been knowing that someday they're going to militarize these ferry boats to fill them with, their army and bring over tens of waves of them. Each boat could carry thousands of them. you bring 10 boats over, you could bring over 80,000, armed combatants onto the shores of Taiwan. They know that. And so Taiwan is raising the red flag today saying, hey, everybody, just letting you know, they are running drills with their ferry boats. So this could all get very interesting very, very quickly. So the next interesting headline is, well, we covered that one from BB
Tyler,
about, yes.
I just found online the exact content of that so-called Xi Jinping thoughts book.
Okay.
It's in Chinese, but if you use the Chrome Google Translate, you should be able to read the content.
Okay. So
it's like the commandments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, but like they said, it starts in elementary school when you're 3 years old, and it goes until you finish college. So it depends on.
It looks quite complicated for elementary school, though. The Chinese,
yeah, so this probably isn't the elementary school one, and this website is from the China's own website.
Yes. Use the Google Chrome the Google Translator.
Right, I have the Google Chrome translator, Cheryl. It says
do it.
Xi Jinping's study outline of the thought of socialism with Chinese characteristics in the new era. That's the English translation. Xi Jinping's thoughts on socialism with Chinese characteristics in the new era is the guiding ideology that the party and the country must adhere to for a long time. The 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China established, which just concluded, by the way, established Xi Jinping's thoughts on socialism with Chinese characteristics for the new era as the guiding ideology that the party must uphold for a long time, and solemnly written it into the party's constitution, realizing that the party's guiding ideology advances with the times. Number 1, socialism with Chinese characteristics has entered a new era. These are quite long. So number 2 is the fundamental direction of contemporary China's development and progress. Number 3, adhere to the people as the center. Number 4, realizing the Chinese dream as a great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. And number 5, start a new journey of building a socialist modern world all in an all-around way. And there's a lot of these. There's 19 of these.
Tyler, I tweeted earlier on the 14th 5-year plan, which they talked about things that are going to happen in Hong Kong. I don't know if you saw that.
No. Number 15, though, is build the people's army into a world-class army in an all-around way. And number 18, build the party stronger and stronger. Number 19, master Marxist thinking methods and working methods, which means, work very hard. So anyway, thank you for that one, Cheryl. And the next story is this one, that the iPhone 13 and AirPods 3 release dates may have been revealed. It's claiming that they will be revealed on September 17th, which is a Friday, which actually makes perfect sense, because now it's very likely that the Apple event will be September 14th, because they're almost always on Tuesdays in early September. And so now getting a little too close for it to be September 7th. So it makes sense it would be September 14th, the Tuesday, second Tuesday in December, or maybe the 3rd. Anyway, because when they do these live announcements and Tim Cook says, here's the new iPhone 13, and it will be ready on Friday, which will be September 17th. So this all adds up very nicely. It looks like the dates make some sense given the expected September 14th event dates, as this blog post says. Chinese publication IT Home is citing listings from an unspecified e-commerce app, which in turn were first posted on China's Weibo social media site. The dates make some sense given the expected September 14 event date, but the image could easily be either faked or whatever. But it says, the iPhone will be available for order Friday, September 17th. That makes perfect sense. The event's Tuesday, September 14th. Tim Cook will announce, here's the new iPhone, ready for order this Friday, as he has done many, many years in a row. So it looks like September 14th is the event, September 17th is the order date. So next one is this one, that McDonald's runs out of milkshakes amid supply chain issues. In the UK, shortage of lorry drivers reportedly to blame for issue affecting 1,200 500 McDonald's in England, Scotland, and Wales. Chinese researchers use nuclear tech to eradicate mosquitoes. Highly recognized Chinese researchers have come one step closer to bring deadly mosquito-borne disease under control by applying nuclear technology. And Willie sends in this one about the ear EEG, which we talked about in our last meeting, which Jason sent in. It's truly a wild idea, and it's more than an idea. This researcher says they have it working, which is earbuds that can read your mind. I know that sounds crazy, so let me repeat it. A researcher has developed earbuds that can read your mind, and you can control your phone but with your thoughts. This is real, and in a sense, in a way, I've done this myself already. And what I mean is, I participated in a soccer game where you couldn't use your hands or your feet. You had to move the ball with your thoughts, and to do so, you wore a little device, very small device, not expensive, that clips onto your forehead, and it can feel these minuscule movements that are a result of your thoughts. So when you think something, you move in a very minuscule way that is imperceptible to humans, but is perceptible to this device. And these earpods are the same. These AirPods can also detect super minuscule movements that relate to your thoughts. So if you think, mute my microphone in Clubhouse, your inner ear will create such tiny micro movements as a signature result of that thought that minuscule micro movement can be registered as a command to your phone. So you could answer your phone or text your mom, or who knows, turn on your flashlight on your phone by thinking it without even saying it. Another example would be if you're listening to music with your AirPods, somebody approaches you and starts talking to you, your focus will shift from the music to the person who's trying to speak to you. Simply by shifting your focus, that might be detectable on a microscopic level, and the device would recognize that and mute the music so that you could focus on the person trying to talk to you.
Tyler.
But again, to thread the needle, just like I moved the soccer ball with my thoughts in this very similar way. Go ahead. And by the way, it only took me 30 seconds to learn how to move the soccer ball with my thoughts. So there's a signature movement. When you try and think, make the ball go forward or left or right or back, it can tell. It can understand. There's a part of your brain that it's able to know that that's the part of the brain that is responsible for trying to make objects move via thought. Go ahead, Lakeisha.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really cool. And beyond the tech piece, as I was listening to you, it reinforces kind of the mind body, metaphysical, spiritual connection between how our thoughts shape our behaviors and our actions. So I think it's really an incredible advance. And I look forward to seeing some research, that really speaks to the science behind the technology, because I think it can be very powerful in many, many ways.
Yeah. So, Reuters reporting a drought in central Bolivia is creating tensions over water rights, pitting boat operators against farmers. The beginnings of a water war in Bolivia. And it's a video, and it's a YouTube video. Here it comes in multiple places. And thank you for that one. A drought in central Bolivia is creating tensions over water rights, pitting boat operators against farmers. Okay, the next one is from Cheryl, that the U.S. government agencies plan to increase their use of facial recognition technologies. A new survey shows the controversial facial recognition systems are poised to play an even bigger role in federal business. Yes, every police department in America, and in fact, the world, is going to have facial recognition and use all of the cameras all across the city, because it's so incredibly cost effective, and is a huge, huge saving of resources for all government agencies to have facial recognition, including immigration. When people arrive at the border, it's really nice to be able to confirm who you are biometrically. It's a lot of extra security. It solves a lot of problems for immigration. It also solves a lot of problems for police when they see a photo or a video of an individual to know who it is instantly without having to spend lots of money and lots of time and lots of people to hopefully figure out who this person is who just robbed this old lady, when they can just, boom, know who it is automatically. That is so incredibly valuable. It's hard to overestimate how valuable that is. It's worth tens of millions of dollars, every year easily. And they're selling this technology for an absolute minuscule fraction of that cost. So, of course, they will all have it. There's no question about that. The question is, should it be available to the private market? Should Starbucks be able to recognize you so they can greet you by your name when you come in the door and keep a database of all of your orders and whatever else? So that's where it gets sticky. But the idea
Charles
of
is in the room.
He is?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Well, then he's smiling as I'm doing his selling for him.
I know.
So we will get again. We've covered this headline now multiple times, but it's common. Anyone who thinks otherwise, this is so common sense that they're going to do this. It's you're kidding yourself if you don't think every government agency on the planet is going to have some form of this. In fact, they most already do, and they're doubling down, and they want more of this. More of this, please. This is insanely helpful. Can you give us more stuff like this? Because this is a huge game changer. So anyway.
So Tyler, did you see that other tweet that I twatted? In like the countermeasures to this, there's
no
like painted faces. I think it was from 2 days
Yes,
ago.
I did see that. That was a few days ago. Yes,
I think there's a huge market in the to counter all of that technology as well, which should be interesting. I'm interested.
Just for the record, it doesn't work.
Okay.
But just curious, how about everyone is now having majority of the people having their face mask on, right? The mask on. Would that affect the affect the result, Charles?
If it's facial
recognition,
recognition,
it doesn't work. None of those countermeasures work.
Even the face mask, because it only shows your eyes.
Mask. You only need 3 points on the face to make an identification out of 1,028.
Yeah, that's true.
So the Matrix movie. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I should add that people are very how to put this. They don't understand that this article comes from information from February 2020, and it's now August 2021. So the database is much larger. The number of countries is much larger.
Okay.
That's good.
So the next one is, a lot of people have been waiting for the fourth the follow-up to the Matrix movie franchise, and now the title has been released, The Matrix Resurrections, and features Keanu Reeves, Neo character sporting long hair, and we can't wait. So the next one is...
Tyler, real quick.
Yeah.
So another thing that I've learned in returning to Bangkok is that condos that had been using fingerprint ID in order to enter the building or the elevator have transitioned to facial recognition because of the pandemic. And so, So I was at my friend's, high-end condo yesterday, and you need to register your face to enter the building, as well as enter the, the elevator to get to your floor. So
that's convenient.
So it's absolutely happening, and I think it's only going to permeate and continue.
Well, what's convenient is having a situation globally where you can legitimately replace identification points that require you to touch things with identification technology that doesn't require you to touch it, under the guise of, protecting everybody from catching COVID and transmitting it by a touch. Meanwhile, you're installing this face recognition technology everywhere.
That's exactly what's happening. I mean, in that particular building, which is owned by a major builder in the country. So yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Carol. That's exactly what they're doing. It's like, oh, great, I don't have to touch this finger pad that 50 other people have touched in the past 3 hours. I just have to look up and it registers my face. So yes, I think that we will be more receptive given, just the concerns around, spreading germs during the pandemic.
I would say insurance is forcing a lot of this too. Like you have to get home insurance, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if it will work well in countries like South Korea when so many people resemble each other because of plastic surgery.
That's a good question, but I still think that there have to be, and Charles, please feel free to add your point of view. But even if people have similar features, right? Even if I wanted the Michael Jackson nose, I mean, it's not the South Korean nose, but there are still other features that would make me and not Michael Jackson or other people that have that nose. But I think it's a really good point.
Okay. Whole bunch more articles here. This one is about Africa. Stable coins find a use case in Africa's most volatile markets. Pegged to the dollar, cryptocurrencies like stable coins can offer a respite from inflation in countries like Nigeria and Zimbabwe, but come at a risk. And indeed, that's why Nigeria is one of the biggest crypto using countries on the planet. For that very reason, the Tether specifically is quite widely used in Nigeria for that reason. The next one is the Taliban helps China target Uyghurs to woo Beijing. The Taliban has spoken out against the oppression of Muslims, obviously. That's an understatement. And around the world, but is staying silent on the prosecution of Uyghur Muslims in China, because they want those juicy investment dollars and infrastructure projects, no doubt. The fall of the Afghan capital to the Taliban is not only an existential crisis for Kabul's female population, religious minorities, journalists, human rights activists, and those who held key roles in the previous Afghan administration or U.S.-led forces, but also Afghan Uyghur families. If anyone knocks on our door, I scream that it's the Chinese government coming to take us back to China, an Afghan Uyghur woman told the Uyghur Human Rights Project. These fears were amplified when the Taliban announced that it regards China as a friend of Afghanistan and that it is willing to help Beijing round up those suspected of having ties to Uyghurs, a separate, which is aligned with Al Qaeda. So apparently Al Qaeda is quite friendly with the Uyghurs, but the Taliban, now that the Taliban's friendly with China, is not. Here's a quote, China is a friendly country here's a quote from the Taliban. China is a friendly country and we welcome it for reconstruction and developing Afghanistan, Taliban spokesperson Sahil Shaheen told a Chinese state media outlet last month. Earlier this year, the ousted Afghan government arrested 10 Chinese government spies who were creating a fake East Turkmenistan Islamic Movement cell in that's a fake Uyghur cell in Afghanistan to entrap Afghan Uyghurs. So there were Chinese spies in Afghanistan trying to catch Uyghurs in Afghanistan because Afghanistan's border with China is essentially the part of China where the Uyghurs are. So if the Uyghurs were to escape from China, they would likely go into either Pakistan or Afghanistan, and more likely Afghanistan, because that border is with Pakistan is much more stronger Chinese-controlled border than the one with Afghanistan. So anyways, this is a really interesting accusation that, although there's a link to confirm it, it's published that from the Hindustan Times, which is a reputable publication, that the Afghan government arrested 10 Chinese government spies who were creating a fake Uyghur Afghan camp to attract the Uyghurs in Afghanistan to join them and then entrap them and take them back to China. That's what the article says, which demonstrates the level of paranoia Beijing holds towards an Islamist separatist group estimated to comprise only of a few hundred militants. Today, there are an estimated 2,000 Uyghurs living in Afghanistan, but despite most having lived in the country for years and many having Afghan citizenship, their official identification forms still state they are Chinese migrants, prompting fears that they will be used as a bargaining chip or a diplomatic gesture by the Taliban to curry favor with Beijing. Tellingly, the Taliban is adopting the Pakistani government's diplomatic doublespeak in calling out the oppression of Muslims around the world but staying silent on the prosecution of Uyghur Muslims in China to stay in Beijing's good graces. We care about the oppression of Muslims, be it in Palestine, in Myanmar, or in China, and we are about the opposite, and we care about the opposition. We care about the oppression of non-Muslims anywhere in the world, but what we are not going to do is interfere in China's internal affairs, the Taliban spokesperson told reporters last month. Clearly, the Taliban wants to show the Chinese government that it welcomes it as a partner in the post-U.S. military operation era, rounding up and deporting the Uyghur militants aligned to Al-Qaeda to please Beijing is easier said than done, however, because doing so will undermine the Taliban's legitimacy as a jihadist organization and risks igniting retribution and retaliation from a complex network of other Islamist militants across Central Asia, according to associate professor at Frostburg State University. Anyway, really interesting article. So,
hey, Tyler,
yes.
the Taliban's going to need China a lot now, because one of the things that just crossed through the news right now is that the World Bank has just cut off Afghanistan because of their treatment of women, of the Taliban's treatment of women.
Interesting. So there's Cal Patel sends in this one from CNBC, and the headline says, Ray Dalio, one of the world's biggest hedge fund investor, is wrong about China's tech crackdown, an economist says. Billionaire investor Ray Dalio said investors were misconstruing China's regulatory clampdown on tech companies as anti-capitalist. Economist George Magnus thinks Dalio is wrong and believes Beijing's crackdown is all about Communist Party's lust for control. China expert George Magnus disagrees with Bridgewater Associates' Ray Dalio on Beijing's tech crackdown. In a LinkedIn post this month, Dalio said investors were misconstruing a clampdown by China on sectors including fintech, online tutoring, and food delivery as anti-capitalist. The trend over the last 40 years has clearly been so strongly towards developing and marketing a market economy with capital markets, with entrepreneurs and capitalists becoming rich, the billionaire hedge fund manager said. As a result, they've missed out on what's going on in China and probably will continue to miss out, Dalio said. Magnus thinks Dalio is mistaken. The economist, who is an associate at the University of Oxford China Center, told CNBC on Wednesday that Beijing's crackdown was all about Communist Party's pursuit of political control. I think Dalio is wrong, Magnus told CNBC's Street Signs Europe. Obviously, he's got a big business in China, so he would say that, wouldn't he? Neither Dalio nor Bridgewater Associates was immediately available for comment at the time of publication. Dalio has made a number of bullish comments on China over the past year. In October, he warned investors not to ignore China's rise as an economic superpower. Meanwhile, Bridgewater Associates has been ramping up investments into China's stock market lately. And despite China's scrutiny of its massive tech sector, Dalio is doubling down, quoted as saying, don't misinterpret these wiggles as changes in trends and don't expect the Chinese state-run capitalism to be exactly like Western capitalism, he said recently. China's Communist Party is basically driven to control these tech firms and entrepreneurs, despite the fact that they are the essence of the dynamism of China's economy, Magnus said. And not that my opinion is on par with George or Ray, but I think they're both right simultaneously. Ray obviously has made billions on investing in China. He obviously knows what's really going on in China. He's very closely tied with the CCP. Magnus, the professor at Oxford, likely is not connected with the CCP. Actually, probably doesn't actually really know what's going on. Doesn't really have the tens and hundreds of billions of dollars invested with skin in the game. He probably has, I don't know, $1,000 invested in China. Ray has hundreds of billions. Ray's very close to Uncle G. Ray actually knows what the fuck is going on in China. That's how you make money in China, is you get really close to the party. Ray's really close to the party. Really, really, really close. That's why Ray can talk and say, no, the rest of the investors don't actually know what's going on. I do, because I had lunch with G yesterday and I'm having dinner with him tomorrow. I can tell you for sure, you guys don't understand what's going on. China's trying to fix the birth rate. He even said so in that CNBC piece, that this crackdown on ed tech is not a crackdown on big tech. It's a crackdown on the cost of having kids. by the way, I've got a headline in about 5 minutes that proves this. That they also are cracking down and just have cracked down on the cost of housing, which they said they were going to do. And in fact, our friend David Chang, who joins every day, even predicted that would be the next crackdown. And it's a very logical one when you understand the real motives of what they're cracking down on. They're cracking down on the cost of having kids. So they first cracked down on the price of educating the child, then the price of having a home near the best schools. And by the way, that's literally the headline I'm going to read, is about the price of the homes near the schools. Here it is. Home prices in the South China Morning Post today. Home prices in China school districts go off the boil in crackdown. Home prices in China school districts are coming down on a crackdown on elitism to ensure balanced allocation of resources. Efforts by local authorities to tamp down on the home buying frenzy in school districts are paying off. Yes, that's their focus.
Tyler,
yes.
And Tyler, I think for the third child, I was in a meeting with somebody from Hong Kong, and they were saying the third child will be all paid for by the government. And so they were telling me I should thinking about Mirzan because, pregnancy will increase and therefore more incidents of preeclampsia, etc. So I'm just saying that you're
when can we
spot
copy
on.
this in the U.S.? When can we copy this in the U.S.? I love all these policies. They're all good.
So the point is, in this debate between is China's crackdown, essentially we can simplify this whole debate, is the crackdown on China more to do with the birth rate or more to do with control? I say it's both. Simultaneously. They're doing both simultaneously.
Both.
The crackdown on EdTech is not about control. That's about the birth rate. The crackdown on the housing market, that's about the birth rate. The new policies about second child, third child, all happening simultaneously, and financially incentivizing the third child, that's about the birth rate. All those things are all about the birth rate. The crackdown on Didi, the Uber of China, and the data of the cameras in the cars, that's about control. The crackdown on Alibaba and the fintechs and the central bank digital currency, that's about control. So both of those things are happening simultaneously. So
it's really anti-mob measures because all those things.
I recall your point.
Corruption.
Yeah. So I think both of them are right for different reasons. Anyway.
Yeah, but we keep talking about China facial recognition and monitoring, but it's happening to us as well. It's happening in London. I mean, I was shocked when I read that article that it's not even been debated in Parliament. And I'm not saying I'm against it, but I think it needs to be, in a liberal democracy, our legislators should debate it before implementing it.
Tyler, Heyman is in the audience, and then he said he has something to contribute about
Heyman?
this. Yep.
Hey, there he is. Hey, Heyman. What do you got, Heyman?
Hey, guys. Hey,
bring us to goods, Heyman.
Am I up? Oh, I am. Sorry. So one more thing is also, if you notice, Chinese government, they're also very selective on who they let propagate, right? So in terms of birth rates, too, they're actually very interested. Most of the Chinese, the majority is ruled by the Han, right?
Right.
And if you notice that they're selecting different groups and they're ensuring that the minorities are not overpopulating.
Good point.
They're helping sterilizing the minorities, and that includes the Xinjiang area. But the key thing is they are worried about the Han population, which is like 91% of the China. They're very scared about that population dying because they've been the strongest, and that's the main reason for everything, their whole expansion. And so look at those numbers because they're actually been doing population control in certain areas, but in other areas they're definitely, as Ray Dalio also points out. But Ray Dalio, I sometimes question it, but he's absolutely in touch with the Chinese. He knows what he's talking about when he says about that.
I think he got hot on the mic because the big crackdown was on EdTech, and it crushed a whole lot of people. And when they wiped out the whole EdTech market, there was a whole lot of investors everywhere, including the U.S., who got wiped out in that. And so he came out to say, no, this isn't about control. This is about birth rate on that particular issue of the EdTech.
And there's apparently in the Xinjiang province, 4.5 million less births in that after that whole.
Yeah, they don't want the Uyghurs having kids. Everybody realizes that. So the next, keeping it on China for a minute, Cal sends in this one from the New York Times that somebody named Zhang Zhang. Anyone know that name? You want to flash your mics if you know who Zheng Zhan is? Nobody does. Zheng Zhan is the young Chinese blogger who calls herself a journalist. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. That was blogging at the very end. She lives in Wuhan, and when the outbreak was just starting, she was blogging it on a daily basis about what's going on here in Wuhan. There's a virus and what's going on, and now we're being locked in our houses, and so now Zheng Zhan, the Chinese journalist, was sentenced to 4 years in prison for documenting the COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan. She is now seriously ill from a hunger strike and weighs less than 90 pounds, her former lawyer has said. That's from the New York Times. The next one.
Also, yeah. Sorry, Tyler. There's a new article I'm going to tweet out right now. They're saying that U.S. bankers are talking with Chinese officials quietly. The emissaries from the U.S. finance firms are preparing for another round of talks with senior Chinese regulatory officials in an effort to secure access to the Chinese market. So these are Wall Street veterans who actually, helped shift all the credit and jobs to elsewhere, right? Are sort of now worried that they're going to be locked out of China. So they're actually starting these talks. I'll send you the tweet right now.
Okay. So the next headline is also on China. It's the headline from India Times, the Economic Times of India, says Zimbabwe is under the control of China, and is anyone noticing? The headline reads, Zimbabwe under complete Chinese control, is anyone noticing? It would not be completely out of place to state that, like many African nations, Zimbabwe too is enveloped in Chinese influence, but it with regard to the political, military, and economic class, they all seem to be bowing down to the mighty Chinese who have invested heavily in Zimbabwean economy, and who the locals fear would take away their assets on account of constitutional loan defaults. Simply put, China's power and clout in Zimbabwe can be recognized from the fact that despite numerous cases of rampant abuse by Chinese employers of the local labor, no measures have been taken by the government. Things have deteriorated to such an extent that local employees have even been shot dead by Chinese employer at a mine when the laborers demanded their legitimate outstanding wages. It is common knowledge that the Chinese company owners do not pay any heed to Zimbabwean law, the citizens' legal rights, and instead discriminate them from the on-site Chinese miners by paying lower wages of merely $35 a month. It has also been reported that these employers assault the local employees by forcing them to operate in dangerous, inhuman, harsh, and life-threatening conditions amounting to slavery. In a Chinese company's accommodation, as many as 16 locals are shoved together and accommodated in one room. This is being done at a time when the world is battling a global pandemic and allegedly Chinese origin that mandates social distancing between people. One of the only organizations to rightfully raising their voice against these assaults by Chinese employers is the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Union. The Chinese diplomats did try to bring out an amicable solution with the union leaders, and despite assurances, have failed to improve working conditions. In the meanwhile, the union leaders have been warned of dire consequences of highlighting issues that affect Chinese interests in Africa and popularity in Zimbabwe. The unions allege that the Zimbabwe government looks at their problems with a Chinese prism and therefore is unable to evolve strategies for the workers' welfare. The union has brought cases to the government's notice where local laborers have died at the factory site, but their deaths were concealed by the Chinese owners in order to avoid paying compensation to the family and the deceased.
There was a documentary on this.
Yes,
sorry,
there
Tyler,
was.
there was a documentary.
I watched
it.
They
talked about, well, and there were actually issues with the fact that it's not the Chinese government that's actually leading to this. It's unfortunately these business leaders from China who are known to abuse the system and get as much funds, and they don't treat their workers well anyways in China. And now they go to Africa, and unfortunately the prejudices come out. They always, not all Chinese, but there had been this prejudice about Chinese and African American. I think that unfortunately we know that prejudice of Africa it's prevalent in most cultures right around the world. And Chinese, especially these business folks who go there, have tended to treat them really badly. And the Chinese government had not paid attention to it until all these these reports started coming on the news, and then China is now trying to make sure that they pull in line some of these business people. Hopefully that's happening more.
Oh, the best paragraph is the next paragraph. In terms of exercising control over political and strategic affairs, China is the only country which has invested in providing technical support to Zimbabwe security apparatus and the presidency directly. Though the main role of the Chinese was to build infrastructure, determined to have direct control, Beijing embarked on a mission to project its technical capabilities and surveillance capabilities to enable monitoring every nook and corner of the country. To gain full authority over defense and paramilitary proceedings, China built the National Defense College and also financed the 650-seat Parliament House, and is currently actively engaging in exporting AI to Zimbabwe. Through these mechanisms, China aims to have complete access to the data on Zimbabwean nationals, military, and government personnel.
The same they do in Sri Lanka as well. They invest in the leader because they want to make sure that they protect themselves, right? So their investment, they need the leader who will actually turn the spigots and make sure the controls are in place, so they'll never lose their deals.
So a little bit more of an unusual angle on this with things. If you PTR, I've got an image on here from a poster from something called Wolf Warrior 2. This is the most profitable movie in Chinese history with things. Like this outbeat all the Marvel's Avengers and everything like this. And the reason I bring this up with things is because whenever you're reading South China, the Morning Post, or some of the other publications of things, there's always references to essentially wolf warrior diplomacy and wolf warrior diplomacy. And I'm like, where does this wolf warrior term come from? Well, it turns out it comes out from their big famous action movie. It is, in the entire plot around this basically pivots around in a generic African country. Essentially, the Chinese are there with things, and the Jason, the Bourne type kind of character there. He's basically kicking China, being like Chinese secret agent, and basically making sure to kick all the evil Americans out of the country that are basically causing all the African groups to fight with each other. And it is quite astounding. It's a pretty impressive work of propaganda with things, but it is the most popular, it's the most profitable and most popular movie in Chinese history with things. It's I don't know if I'd recommend watching it. Maybe watch like a highlight reel or two with things from it. It's
apparently they had a huge following on Netflix. I'm not sure which channel. I think Amazon Prime is airing it, right?
It's worth seeing. It's got one of the guys from Captain America on there with things.
Wait, what's it called again?
Wolf Warrior 2. And the only reason I reference this is because it pops up all in China's official state media publications about whether they should pursue more of like a peaceful panda strategy or more of a wolf warrior diplomacy strategy. And it's like, very interesting.
It's like the Rambo. It's like Rambo for Chinese.
But I mean, it's the same propaganda. Hey, this is Elle, but it's the same type of propaganda that the U.S. did, and actually, I swear, I hope that Africa will get to the point where its leaders will stop selling it off for their own personal gain, just to be, whatever leaders in politics is. That's what this is. I mean, Africa forever has been like the hub for so many resources and stuff, and now China is just going to become another colonizer of the country, and I hope that people will, start to recognize and see that.
I'll find
I think it's already. I think it's already is like becoming already too late. I mean, here in Ethiopia is not much different from Zimbabwe. We are maybe a bit different, but every single infrastructure development that has fueled Ethiopia's economic growth, like 7-8% growth for the last decade, has been financed by the Chinese, from the railway to the road to many things. And the amazing part is everything that we have been saying is the same. 5 years ago, I remember Canadian business delegation came and I took them to industrial parks, which is like export processing zones, kind of, imitating the East Asian kind of development. And there are a ton of industrial parks that have been developed by Chinese. So this Eastern Industrial Zone was built by Chinese. And believe it or not, when you get it, the big poster says in English, not English, there is only Chinese and there is English, but there is not even local language. Even the Canadian business delegation, he just raised his hand and he said, where is the local language? I was like shocked. I didn't even notice myself. And it's just amazing all those things are built, and some of them is like it's almost like it's not in Ethiopia. So yeah, it's really worrisome. But like somebody just before me said that Africa should have been taking, options, financing options in the West, which they always complain about the conditionality, the stringent things that get attached between democracy and other things, but also the extreme side of it. China would say it's no involvement, but extreme way of how they finance it. And if you look at even the Kenyans' agreement to develop the Mombasa port, I think if they default, they can take control of it. Like, isn't that similar to Sri Lanka?
Yep.
So
there's
so
a
it's
Yeah, but they
go
also
ahead, I'm
remember,
done.
don't forget
there's
that they leveraged off their ports though as collateral. Like some of the places that are the coastal, they use their ports as collateral, and then when they defaulted, China owns some of the ports.
And it
So
was
that's what I'm
expected to
saying.
be
They're
faulted
selling off
too.
their infrastructure. Yeah, yeah, and it
yeah
was
in the
expected and
in
done
the
by
blockchain
design.
world, Binance, which is owned by Changing uh, Ping Zhao. God, I can't remember right now. I haven't had coffee yet, but they have now so much leverage in Africa. There isn't really a country at this point that has the leverage to kick them out. And this started years ago. They were the first to make big headway into any part of Africa south of the MENA region, the Middle East North Africa region. So it's actually it's an enormous, like right now they're in I think 4 or 5 countries, and the only other competitor would be Cardano's has a few projects in there, but the size isn't even compatible. And I think it's one of the things that has actually put CZ, the head of Binance, in favor with China, because he's a Hong Kong and a Taiwanese, I believe, resident. So, but I think it's one of the things that put him in favor of it, because the other thing that China has that the U.S. doesn't is they don't have a Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. So if they bring in a lot of cash and extra cash for officials, and they're caught doing that, that doesn't have the same consequences as it would if a U.S. company did that. There's a lot of limitations on how you can spend money, and if you spend money to what, like if you are some minor bribe allowances, and this is not to say that like Africa is all about bribes. It's just every country is to some extent. But if you bring a lot of cash and you bring a free ability to pay off officials in order to choose your bid for large projects, you have a huge advantage over U.S. companies, where if that gets documented and sent back to the U.S., it's basically another form of blackmail that they have, right? Which is, I will tell them that that you did this, and you will be fined, and there's a lot of really bad penalties that can come from the FCPA.
And that's the same
Well,
issue.
and
Just very briefly on
I
this one,
think
there's something that exists that a lot of people that they or may not exist. We'll put it that way with things. Imagine essentially a list by country of essentially all the prominent politicians, leaders, and such. And imagine you have the person's name, and you have a price point right next to it that is basically being calibrated by your local intelligence agency, and a binder of this that put out to every chief negotiator, kept under lock and key, of course, and whoever's local security thing is. It makes negotiations a lot easier when you know what the price point for any of the decision makers is for your
Or the
local
compromat stuff.
They don't
Like,
do
where are
that.
you
It
entertained?
doesn't quite work that
yeah,
way. So my friend
yeah.
is writing the Africa speech for the CIA, which comes out next month. So stay tuned for that. He's going to mention facial recognition in it.
Okay, more headlines here. We got a whole bunch of other Chinese ones coming up soon, but Poppy sends in this map of the U.S. climate change. This is from the New York Times, just published a map, and these maps tell the story of 2 Americas, one parched and one soaked. The country, like most of the world, is becoming both drier and wetter in the era of climate change. It depends where you live. And now you can see from this map of the New York Times where in America is getting parched and what parts are getting wet. And as I've said, Southwest America is going to be completely, utterly parched. I'm from there. My mother still lives there. My dearest friends and cousins and everyone I ever grew up with still lives there. And I'm telling you, it's going to become uninhabitable. So look at the map from the New York Times and draw your own conclusions. The next one is Professor Osif sends in this video that's just breaking in the last few hours out of Kabul at the airport. and the person on the ground who sent in the original video via Twitter says the Taliban is brutally against the Hazaras at Kabul airport. Hazaras, like the Pashtuns, is a separate tribe in the region of Afghanistan, and the Hazaras were actually American allies, very considerable, strong, them and the Northern Alliances who America was fighting with initially, which originally drove the Taliban out. And so the Hazaras and the Taliban are not friendly. And now that the Taliban is back and there's Hazaras trying to go to the airport, and this gentleman has got his face covered in blood here in this video that I just tweeted out. And Professor Asif says hunger, famine, and potential genocide is on the horizon. Shocking scene at Kabul airport. And the next article is the one I was looking for from... Yes, Messi?
Taylor?
Yes?
Can I just
quickly
add...
you can, very quickly.
Yes, I just read an article this morning that Nigeria extremists like Boko Haram and the Islamic extremists, there are some scholars that are concerned that the success of Afghanistan may give them some kind of, boost or something, and then they may try something else.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah. And they Boko Haram started singing, "We want our own country." I mean, ISIS had Syria for a bit, and now the Taliban's being, received in Afghanistan. Boko Haram, where can we go? I'm right there with them. Where can I want to go buy an island nation myself. So the next one is from Nikkei Japan, who does very good reporting, very good indeed, one of the best. The headline from Nikkei Japan, Asia, says, China mobilizes their civilian ferry boats, which think of them as big cruise ships that also transport semi-trucks, delivery trucks, very large delivery vehicles, hundreds of them simultaneously. So China mobilizes their civilian ferries for Taiwan invasion drills. Giant vessels could help Beijing leapfrog amphibious transport bottleneck. Taipei, China's long-standing threats to invade Taiwan would require the biggest amphibious invasion in human history, and analysts say recent military activities, including exercises using commercial ferries, appear designed to practice exactly that. Now, ferries are massive vehicles. Think thousands of people, hundreds of cars and trucks and transport vehicles, all in one big ship. It's not a military vessel. It's a civilian vessel.
Yeah, state-owned civilian, I guess.
Right. The point is, China knows and Taiwan knows if China were to ever actually attack Taiwan, they would need to utilize these vessels to bring over the army, the actual physical cavalry, the foot soldiers in mass, and vehicles. So the vehicles and the people would come over on these ferries. And so the fact that they're using these ferries in drills is a new level of concern in the China's ever increasing kind of display of projected power on Taiwan. It's now reaching a new level with these drills, because this part is where it gets serious. Yes.
Are there ferries? Are these ferries currently going back and forth between sort of between the areas at the moment? Do we know?
You'll need to check the article I just tweeted.
The reason why I'm asking that is because if you've got established ferry routes that are coming back and forth, and they're obviously they're then doing drills with ferries, maybe the ones that look the same as ones that are currently traveling back and forth, or maybe similar as ones that are traveling back and forth. Taiwan's going to have that decision at any given time of saying, well, we think this is a militarized vehicle. We're not sure if it's a militarized vehicle. Should we fire on this potentially militarized vehicle that also might potentially just have civilians on board? Like, you may end up with that situation potentially.
Guys, you guys are falling for something, though. This is all just saber rattling, though, right? Honestly, like, they're going to win by politics. If you think about what happened with the vaccine, the Taiwanese, someone from Taiwan answered to this, but I thought I heard that from Taiwan, Taiwanese people were upset with their government for the fact that they bungled the whole vaccine program, and they were so even glad to get even the Chinese vaccine, right? So I'm just wondering, like, they could play this game a little bit longer, and they could do the political game, right? All they have to do is usurp a government and just basically put their own people who are more focused on Chinese, aligning with the Chinese because all the economies are interlinked, etc. Culture, everything's interlinked, and creating something. They're not going to do something like a military operation. I don't think they will. I'm not sure.
Well, I think what will happen is we will need to have surveillance at the place where these ferries originate from a Chinese port. We'll need to see if they're loading the ferries with military vehicles or military personnel, or even just complete male. They might be undercover and not wearing military uniform or garb as they board the boats, and they might have bags and then put on their military fatigues, during the journey. So if you have one of those ferries where it's all men and no women and a whole bunch of vehicles that could be military vehicles, they must be watching those as they leave China heading for Taiwan now. So, and then if they feel like it is one, they might force it to stop somehow and check it out with a drone. You could fly a drone near it and check it out and see,
Satellite.
This would be known as the deer in headlights approach. It's coming, there's a thing, but if you stare at it longer, maybe that'll basically change the course of the road.
No, they know that the Chinese know that they basically have a 3-year window if they want to invade Taiwan, because by the time our satellite infrastructure is in place, they're done. I mean, they're probably not going to make it. So I think I would be very, very surprised. I mean, any of those ships can be hit and sunk with hypersonic missiles quite easily. Mm-hmm. So the idea of Taiwan, they're using it as a negotiation leverage, but it's not going to quite work.
Yeah, but they've got way more ships than we do in the area with things. So if it's missile versus missile,
we have more hypersonic missiles than they do by an order of magnitude. And besides,
it's not about missile versus missile. It's missile versus terminal targets. If you have 800,000 fishing boats that essentially are all in one area, it's like, which one's the military one?
Which ones have civilians nearby or on board?
But Charles, do you actually think that this is going to actually come to a physical war? I don't think that's going to happen, right? Exactly. So it's more like it's saber-rattling Cold War II type thing where they rattle up and then they get to the, every one of their lobbyists get their, weapons in place and everything else is spent. Governments buy equipment.
So if America and Europe recognizes Taiwan as a nation, an independent nation, and invites them into the UN, you don't think China, how do you think China will retaliate?
Just cry. I mean, it's just like, no, this is not. And they could actually put something in the UN policy saying that, but I don't think they could even veto it. Oh, they have veto rights, right? I don't know. They could get a block with Russia and do veto.
Well, they could certainly influence all of their African puppets to vote for them, yeah.
Yeah, the African nations,
You can turn off all of their ships, too, from space. You can turn them off.
But they could do it too, right? They could do it too.
Yeah,
we don't know what
the issue is they can't hit our satellite infrastructure sufficient to achieve their objective.
But
it's not. I mean, with the laser beams, anti-satellite stuff with things is, they get it's a regular thing that they scream about when it's like, oh no, you tested that anti-satellite weapon or the blinding type kind of thing. I mean, this is one of the things that stopped the brilliant pebbles from being deployed.
Guys, we can't even solve the COVID crisis. How the hell are we going to pinpoint these guys from laser and all this stuff?
Because it doesn't involve idiots on Facebook, Heyman.
True, but still, it could involve idiots in the military who go crazy.
No, you don't involve the idiots in those decisions, Heyman. You don't involve your Aunt Betty into the war room.
No, but we could have Colonel Sanders who could be like gung-ho and start attacking wrongly, and he might sink a battleship. And it's like, oh no, World War III.
No, a lot of the Taiwan also puts out propaganda saying China is going to attack them.
Right.
Because Taiwan has its own interests, its own domestic interests, and basically freaking out on population.
Even Korea's doing it too, right? Apparently the turn in the Korean population has gone away from Japan hatred to now China hatred. Apparently. I'm not sure.
Because everybody wants to as the trading partner of the U.S., which is why Kamala Harris is over there.
Okay. Next, we've got more China headlines. Don't worry. So the next one is Delta Airlines is raising health insurance premiums for unvaccinated employees by $200 a month. That's one way to solve it. The next is from Ted Abramson in the audience, sends in this one that Tesla starts hiring roboticists for the Tesla Bot, humanoid robot project. And Tesla has started to hire roboticists to build the recently announced Tesla Bot, a humanoid robot to become a new vehicle for its AI technology. The next one is, from Evan, that the EU will make Bitcoin traceable and ban anonymous crypto wallets in anti-money laundering drive, with a link there that you can get. And then Messi sends in this one, that Ethiopia to build local rival to Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, and other social media platforms, as they now realize they can, and everyone else will too soon. And then Evan sends in this one, that Synopsys's CEO says that AI designed chips will generate 1000x performance in 10 years. And somebody sends in this one from The Economist, that demand for air conditioning is set to surge by 2050 as income growth increases more than raising temperatures is behind the boom. So the income growth more than the temperatures is behind the boom in as much of the developing world can now afford air conditioners. You're going to see an absolute booms in sales of air conditioners globally. And of course, that doesn't really help the whole. Air conditioners consume quite a bit of electricity as they exist today. So hopefully we can come up with more less energy intensive air conditioners.
More than that, they actually heat the area around it.
Solar-powered air conditioners exist, and the reason why I say this again is because it's a little bizarre when you look at the energy implications of, well, the energy came from the sun, and it powered some air conditioning, and we didn't touch the grid, so it doesn't need to basically be a net CO2 drawdown type kind of thing. It just exists, which is kind of cool.
Air conditioners also heat the air around the air conditioner, so there's an increase in temperature and less airflow around in any cities that have concentrated areas of air conditioning. So people will actually say that the recorded temperature in like the city of New York in Manhattan is much higher because of all the people with using air conditioning. And Italy actually was considering a town in Italy was considering a ban on air conditioning because it was making the city itself so much hotter. It was cooler without it. So interesting sort of, oops.
And it's a concrete jungles too that accommodate these vertical air conditioning in every unit sort of thing.
Thermal design is a lost art form with things. Yep. This used to be one of the most basic things you learn when you're constructing buildings or architecture, and then somewhere along the way, we basically said, just throw an HVAC on there, and essentially you don't need to study essentially basic things like which way the sun is facing in your windows and everything else like that. So this is something that architectural practices and construction practices have to basically get rapidly caught up on. It's weirdly enough, I hate doing these things, but when they go and say, go and study the indigenous culture type kind of things, I'm not about go hug a tree, but there are some basic things for desert engineering that essentially got lost along the way when we tried to make these glass cathedrals everywhere.
And the ideal temperature is 24 to 25 if you want to save the world and save energy and save costs.
You want the fastest way of solving climate change with things is faster than any other thing. Fast fashion, literally, just get the fashionistas of the world to basically wear different clothes that are more practical, that essentially have a wider temperature variations that you're comfortable with, and then essentially the air conditioning can be set at whatever is going to be economically modifiable, rather than essentially because everyone's wearing clothes that don't work in essentially most actually the climates they're wearing the clothes in. But that's the fashion choice solution. It's a weirder solution for climate change, but I haven't heard that one nearly as much.
Okay. Well, why do you assume that people want to solve global warming? I mean, I think I look at that map that Tyler put out, and those are some states that I enjoy staying in, and the ones that are getting punished are ones I don't particularly enjoy staying in. I mean, I think there are gonna be winners and losers from this, just as there was from the last ice age.
We could just terraform, and then we don't need to essentially have winners and losers. But that means having breaking up the box of geoengineering, which is a whole other discussion of politics are fancy now. It's like they're about to get a lot fancier.
But in terms of climate change, there are going to be real dislocations, and right now this is the preview of the appetizer. So we don't want climate change.
Doesn't have to be.
No, there can be dislocations, and you can have facial recognition and keep people out at the borders, or keep them from using your country's.
It's better if they're not migrating to begin with.
Well, that's the problem, right? The borders are changing, right? Especially in the regions that are having all these climate change issues. They're putting in borders. There's regimes that are in place. That's what's causing all these mass exodus as well, right?
It's almost like vaccine passports were a start of something else.
Charles, like, there's a whole thing with the Afghanistans, like people evacuating the airport and stuff, and it's like I'm not like they're going. Do you have the right paperwork to leave on the planes with things? I mean, it's when I hear about facial recognition at border controls things, it just evokes all these ideas that I'm just like it's urgent to cause the situations that require those things to begin with.
I mean, it seems to have worked for Hungary. It seems to have worked for Turkey. I mean, borders work if they are implemented, and they work within country too when you start using digital ID.
But that does not solve humanitarian crises, and maybe you don't want to care about anybody in particular countries. I just don't think that's a good model for the future.
Lifeboat ethics. Lifeboat
yeah, but
ethics. My
one thing also,
obligations are first to my own country before they're and to my own family before they're to other people. And a
it's
lot of
funny
people
because
think that way.
to Charles' point too, it's funny that
both.
Yeah, to Charles's point too, it's also like if you look at the immigrants who are already in a country, they actually don't like immigration also coming across through the regular rules-based way, right? So, for instance, in Canada, we're accepting a lot of Afghan refugees, which is great, but some of the people who are here, the immigrants, when I was speaking to them on the streets, they'll say, "Oh, wait, but we took us so long to get here." It's just the same stories you hear from the U.S. immigrants, right? Like when you hear about the Latino influx, you hear from the Latinos who are actually, oh, is that the right term? Sorry, I better not make the wrong mistake. But Latinx people who are actually in the U.S. who are citizens, if you ask them, they're very staunch Republicans because of the fact that they actually feel, besides the certain family values and everything else, they actually are against immigration that's through the border. So it's interesting to see that dynamic. I mean, it's like once you're there, like you're protecting against anyone else coming in. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's to do with the value system. They've not been brought up in UK or US, and so they don't have that empathy.
Oh no, but no. Even England, you have the same problem. It's everywhere.
No.
Yeah, and the Mexicans that come into not even just Mexicans, it's everywhere.
Everyone, yes,
I
everyone.
used to take cabs and just try to and talk to the people, and they were like, "Well, I got here, but now I see all these immigrants," and I'm like, "But isn't that exactly what you experienced? Don't you have any empathy for them?" And not particularly. Also, the term is actually Latinos. I have no idea why Latinx became a thing, but anytime you have a group of, it doesn't matter how many women there are, if there's one man included in that group, you use the masculine, and so it's Latinos. And I'm a Latina, but if I'm in a group of women with one man, it's still Latinos. So Latinx doesn't actually mean anything to anybody who's Latina.
But
Alexandra,
hey, one
I
thing
think
we
it's such
can't
an
do.
important point.
One thing we can't. Sorry, I was just going to
skimmed an
say.
article the other day, and it was basically saying that people from outside of the culture wanted to make it gender neutral, so they hacked the language, to do so. But most people from within the culture say exactly what you've just said. So.
Heyman, I just wanted to say one thing you can't do is teach people to care, because Orca Boy, my son, was in as a doctor, and his consultant said to him, because the junior doctors these days want to leave at 5 p.m. and he said, "Oh, these people just left," and he goes, "Yes, you can teach them medicine, you can teach them everything, but you can't teach them how to care," and that's the issue here. What you just said.
And what's more, you
To
allow
me also is that I myself lived in a refugee camp and languished there for a year and a half before I got to Canada, and a lot of people just cut in the line. I think there is also that type of fairness. Some people say, even myself, a lot of my friends who are deserving of resettlement are still languishing, after, I don't know, decades, still left there. But then these, privileged people, they just fly in. At least I know my own cousin who just had, who can afford a plane ticket and got visa from Ethiopia and got to Canada, and they just overstayed, and now they got the papers to stay there. So I think there is this fairness. Sometimes people are saying, okay, let's help the people who deserve the help than the overstays and the others who are cutting into the line.
Okay, next headline here. Just a fun one from the New York Times. A roller coaster in Japan shuts down after riders report broken bones. One of the world's fastest roller coasters is closed after 4 passengers in the past 9 months reported bone fractures.
Bone Breaker.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Sign me up. The Destroyer, Skull Crusher. The next one,
the healthcare plan extender.
Scientists have just smashed world record when it comes to solar cell efficiency. Researchers from Australia National University claim to have set a world record for the most efficient type of solar cell.
Is this like a stacked one where they're using like 12 of them all stacked together, or like 100 of little composites? What technique did they use? Please tell us, Tyler.
Okay, for the diehard here.
Please tweet it out.
I just tweeted it. A team of researchers at Australian National University claims to have achieved the record. The process, called laser doping, uses lasers to boost electrical connectivity locally, and is hailed as a promising technology thanks to its many advantages, including the methods of viability in room temperatures and easy control over emitter depth and surface concentration. Moreover, it's a low-cost and industry-compatible process for boosting solar cell efficiency, thanks to the technology.
Ooh, those are magic words, magic words.
The researchers were able to develop a dual-sided silicon solar cell with a front conversion efficiency of 24.3% and a rear conversion efficiency of 23.4%, yielding a bifacial factor of 96.3%. They claim that the performance equates to a 29% effective power production, well exceeding the performance of the best single-sided silicon solar cell, and that the results have been independently verified by the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization. That this is a world record for selectively laser-doped solar cells and among the highest efficiency bifacial solar cells. A dual-sided solar cell, as the name suggests, generates energy from both sides of the cell, and bifacial solar panels collect reflected light and turn it into energy or electricity. According to principal researcher, a dual-sided solar cell can easily outperform a single-sided solar cell, and thus resulting in increased efficiency for solar photovoltaic projects.
You'll be hearing a lot more about bifacial technology in the coming years with things. It's one of those that they had this breakthrough literally about 4 or 5 years ago, and they literally just, what happens if we just leave the back panel off? What will happen? And they were shocked that it actually worked at all. They got to 90% of as efficient as the front. Now that they're essentially, they know this and they can start building for that and optimizing. It's very interesting to hear them basically optimizing the geometry specifically for that effect. I think, Eli, current efficiencies are deployed. You can correct me on this. I think it's 20% is what they do at utility scale typically. But if they could boost that average to 30%, that'd be great.
I think 20% is the going good value, but the 96% is just the ratio of the back to the front. It's not the efficiency.
Yeah.
Solar doping. Okay, next one is from Professor Osif via The Independent in the UK. COVID vaccine protection waning in those first jabbed. Studies suggest protection could fall as low as 50% for the elderly by winter. A study has found the protection provided by 2 doses of Pfizer or AstraZeneca vaccines begins to decline after 5 or 6 months. Protection could fall as low as 50% for those over 65. Healthcare workers by the winter. The next one is Samsung says it can remotely disable stolen TVs. When the TVs connect to the internet, they're remotely disabled. So no point in stealing a Samsung TV. Mark Cuban-backed firm Alethea is creating intelligent NFTs for the metaverse. And yes, if you are playing Buzzword Bingo, I did just mention NFTs and the metaverse and AI all in one headline.
Mark Cuban, and he's getting involved with it. It's got to be big now, right?
You've got 4 check marks on your bingo card in one headline. Non-fungible tokens are ready to get more interactive, according to one firm that's working to create intelligent NFTs. They're actually AI, virtual avatars for the metaverse that are being minted as a series of NFTs. There you go. Next one. Hackers release data trove from Belarus in bid to overthrow Lukashenko regime. We covered that in this segment already, did we not? Ken? I think we did.
What's that question, Tyler?
The Belarus hackers that are going to shut down the Belarus government networks.
I didn't send you that one, did I?
No.
I don't think so.
Faraz did, but I'm saying we covered this one in the past couple hours already, I believe. Yeah.
I think so. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't know why you were asking me. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Headline from DW.com, which is one of my favorite European publication out of Germany. Highly reputable. And the headline reads, vaccinated or unvaccinated, you can still give others COVID. A study has found the effectiveness of the Pfizer vaccine lessens over time, and AstraZeneca might too, but that doesn't mean you're not protected. Protection against Delta, the study which awaited 2 weeks after the second dose effectiveness.
Is this the Zoe study, right?
Yeah.
They also showed, that's what I tweeted, and they also showed that children are not ill. So, I mean, UK is not vaccinating under 17-year-olds. So, but it's better to vaccinate the adults around the world than to vaccinate children, because infection is not going to go, transmission will be there. We just got to live with it and not get killed by it.
But pediatric ICUs are full right now in many places in the United States. I think that's an oversimplification.
This one also from DW, Afghanistan's minerals to boost Taliban coffers. To date, the Taliban have profited from opium and heroin trade. Now the militant group effectively rules the country with vulnerable resources that China desperately wants, including mineral wealth. The next is from Poppy via Fast Company. These 4 tech breakthroughs could help people to live to be 200 years old. This sounds like a fantastic opportunity to play our favorite new show, Tech News Jeopardy. Let's do it. What are the 4 breakthrough technologies that could help people to live to be 200 years old?
Wearables.
mRNA sequencing or CRISPR or something.
Did Messi, hang on, Messi, what did you just say?
Wearables.
God damn you, Messi, you dominate Tech News Jeopardy every time. This is really bizarre. You are destroying everybody. Did anyone else?
Tyler's way of saying congratulations.
It is my way of saying congratulations. I'm just astounded. Messi, you consistently kick everybody's ass in Tech News Jeopardy. This is quite impressive. Yes, wearables is one of the 4. Anyone else have a guess on one of the other 3?
My grandmother made it to 103 with just chicken soup every day.
That's actually not listed in this article as one of the.
I no longer trust this list now.
Yeah, genetic
social interactions?
No, genetic engineering, regenerative medicine, and AI combine to form a powerful antidote to aging. We live in unique times. Very soon, slowing, reversing aging, and even ending aging will become universally accepted ambition within the healthcare community. Technology is converging to make this a certainty. Developments in the understanding and manipulation of our genes and cells is in the development of small-scale health diagnostics and the leveraging of data for everything from drug discovery to precision treatment of disease are radically changing how we think about the healthcare and aging. When I spoke, so the genetic engineering breakthrough, it's about the genetic side of it, and then the regenerative medicine breakthrough.
All them CRISPRs.
And then
but if you outsource everything to AI, you get dementia.
And then
that's a good point. No,
hey Tyler.
Yes.
Hey Tyler,
Brain
this
atrophy.
is Anthony. This is Anthony talking from Tina's account. My iPad died, but we're sitting next to each other. This is Sergey Young's explanation, right? His longevity explanation. Yes. Isn't it correct? Okay, cool.
Yeah, there's a whole dignity to dying that needs to be a part of all of that as well. And that whole point about your mental decay that Cheryl spoke to, insofar as all of those technologies can help fight, and they will fight back dementia and all of that, then sure, living longer is great. But when people are stricken with dementia and things like that, it's not a quality of life that anybody wants. So it's an important part of that.
The key word here is health span.
Yes. The health data intelligence breakthrough. There's one final seismic shift underpinning the longevity revolution, and it's a real game changer, pouring forth from all these digital diagnostic devices together with conventional medical records and digitized search results. It is a torrent of data so large it is hard for the human mind to even fathom. This data will soon become grist for the mill of powerful AI intelligence, or artificial intelligence, that will radically reshape every aspect of healthcare as we know it. Take drug discovery, for instance. In the present day, it takes about 12 years and $2 billion to develop a new pharmaceuticals. Researchers must painstakingly test various organic and chemical substances in a myriad of combinations to try and determine the material candidates that have the best chance of executing the desired medical effect. The drugs must be considered for the widest range of possible disease penetrations, genetic makeup, and diets of targeted patient side effects and drug interactions. There are so many variables that it is little short of miraculous that our scientists have done so much in the field of pharmaceutical development on their own, but developing drugs and obtaining regulatory approval is a long and cash-intensive process. The result is expensive drugs that largely ignore rarer conditions. AI and data change that reality. Computer models now look at massive databases of patients, genes, symptoms, disease species, and millions of eligible compounds to quickly determine which material candidates have the greatest chance of success for which conditions and according to what dose and administration. In addition to major investments by Big Pharma, there are currently hundreds of startups working to implement the use of AI to radically reshape the drug discovery, just as we saw happen in the race to develop COVID-19 vaccines. The impact that this use of AI and data will have on treating or even eliminating life-threatening diseases cannot be overstated.
Tyler, I got to get a little pin and push it into that post, because what we've seen with COVID, there have been other studies that other reports about how AI failed to help the clinicians in the in-hospital fight with COVID. So it may have helped with the vaccination development, but there was a lot of AI. It was a really good story that we shared a couple weeks ago, I think, in the MedTech room, where there was really not a bunch of success with regards to the application of AI in the clinical setting, fighting the fight with COVID. And also, I would have to say, just if focusing on how we are failing with resolving this COVID global chapter we're dealing with. One of the things that I've been kind of passing around with some of my friends is, who would have imagined in 2021 that behavioral science was kind of trumping physical and biological science, in terms of people having their own thoughts with regards to not believing science, first of all, let alone wearing a mask and their issues with the vax and stuff like that. So all of that stuff is great, but you still need people to actually do things, right? Like not eat the cheeseburger, not go down the diabetic, type 2 type of lifestyle and things like that. So can be hopeful, though, I suppose.
Tyler, I think I tweeted about it a few days ago, that the U.S. Federal Trade Commission blocked Illumina $7.1 billion acquisition of a cancer detection company called Grail. I don't know if you saw, because that's all to do with AI, and so Illumina is a huge company on DNA sequencing, and they're basically buying smaller startups so that they can build a easier way of detecting cancer. And I guess they felt that will be affect the price in the United States, I guess. That's why they blocked it. So I don't know if you've seen that.
Okay, no, I don't recall that one. But please do send it again. A few more headlines here. We covered Delta Airlines. This one. Beijing urges Hong Kong to help globalize the yuan. So maybe they mean the Hong Kong government. The Hong Kong people are going to tell you to go stick it where it doesn't shine. But the Beijing urges Hong Kong to help globalize the digital yuan. A rush to launch the anti-foreign sanctions law in city may deter foreign banks and slow currency development. Financial experts and Beijing officials urged the Hong Kong government Monday to help speed up renminbi internationalization by promoting the use of the Chinese currency in the city's capital markets. If the genes of Hong Kong's long-term prosperity and stability are the fact that the city is facing the world with the support from the mainland at its back, the blood system of Hong Kong is the renminbi, says Zhou Chengjun, head of the People's Bank of China. Yeah, who else would say that? So Zhou said Hong Kong had the conditions and foundations to become a global renminbi asset management, value-added and risk management control center, and the government had to boost its effort to achieve this goal. Since 2009, China has seen an increasing use of its currency in trade settlements after the People's Bank of China allowed for the first time China's cross-border trade to be settled in renminbi and encouraged Chinese companies to purchase overseas assets with renminbi, but most foreign companies use their renminbi to buy equipment, raw material, and pay salaries on the mainland, as there were not enough renminbi investment products for them to buy. On March 12th, the National People's Congress approved five-year plan, which called for economic integration and technological cooperation between Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area. According to the plan, Beijing will help upgrade Hong Kong's status as a financial shipping trade center and international aviation hub and strengthen the city's functions as a global offshore renminbi business hub, international asset management center, and risk management center. As the world's largest offshore renminbi hub, Hong Kong has accumulated a renminbi capital pool of about $125 billion over the past decade. For many years, investors have demanded more renminbi products in Hong Kong. Chief Executive Carrie Lam in June said, whatever. You get the idea. So they're trying to push the Chinese currency into Hong Kong, as I said they would do.
And that's their 5-year plan.
Yes. And they will push their own internet there eventually, and all of their control mechanisms there as well. So the world's first crewless zero-emissions cargo ship will set sail in Norway. And you can see it. I just twatted it on Twitter at TNATW. And somebody sent in this one from foreignpolicy.com that the International Olympic Committee should stop lying to itself about the Beijing Olympics. Allowing the games to happen alongside an ongoing genocide would be a disaster. And oh boy, is this a hot issue to come. Not yet. Definitely will be. People are going to boycott the games. Some countries will boycott the games. China will retaliate very stridently to anyone who boycotts the games. If America boycotts the games, and there's a chance they will, then the American sponsors of the Olympics, which is basically all the top sponsors, would obviously then have to retract their sponsorships and potentially derail the Olympics. And Beijing would blow a gasket. Uncle Xi would fall over in his chair and probably have some very stern words, to put it politely. So, in fact, it's expected that he would then nationalize all American assets in mainland China as a retaliation. That's what's expected by leading think tanks on this particular issue. So any American business doing anything in China, including Apple, all those Apple stores and factories and everything, that's all ours now. Thank you. Game over. If that's what's expected if America boycotts the Olympics, and the American sponsors are also forced to withdraw their sponsorship and not able to participate. It's going to get very, very interesting very, very soon. And now that might explain why you're seeing conflicting headlines about how China is having lockdowns in some cities and claiming they've eradicated COVID miraculously in the past 24 hours when it was in 17 districts 2 days ago. Because they need to say that there's no more COVID now because the Olympics is 6 months away. And the athletes need to start making plans now. And if they have COVID spreading there in Delta, which they did 2 days ago, it was kind of spreading out of control. Went from 1 district to 17 districts over the course of the last 3 weeks.
Tokyo.
So if they have no choice but to say they've solved COVID instant magically. So what's going to happen? To be continued on that one. It's a big one. I need to just look at a few more tweets here. Give me 2 seconds. Can robots evolve into machines of loving grace? This one from Cheryl via Wired. What an interesting Headline: It seems only right that technology should restore to us the enhanced world that technology itself destroyed. Perhaps the very focus that facilitated our exile from Eden will one day reanimate our garden with digital life. Well, they're going to put you in a metaverse version of Eden is what they're going to do, Cheryl. Yeah, but that's the article from Wired. Really beautiful art on that one. Okay, now the other really interesting articles. Taiwan plans to build its own rocket launch site. Probably not on the beach facing China. That would be my guess. Probably on the other side of the island. Just a hunch. And let me go through. I have about 50 more articles. From the New York Times, via our friend Dr. Fran, offices are trying to attract, workers back to the offices. And so they're now dangling beehives and garden plots on the rooftops of their offices to coax workers back, so you can play with beehives in the office garden. The latest perks include harvesting honey and digging in the dirt, part of a growing effort to give employees access to fresh air, sunlight, and plants. To which they say, I got that at home, y'all. I can do that from home on a Zoom call. That ain't going to cut it. The next one from Dr. Fran from CNN, the headline reads, Climate change be damned, more Americans are moving to high-risk areas. 17 years ago, Adriana Nichols moved from New York City to Los Angeles. She had a simple wish list, natural light and something else.
Appreciating real estate values, essentially Malibu.
A yard and quiet neighbors. She managed to check everything off that list and has spent nearly 2 decades living in the canyons of Los Angeles. But today, as she looks to move again with her husband, her requirements have changed. It is profoundly a different wish list. A place where we have running water, where we are not having bags packed in case a fire evacuates us. In the last few years, Nicholas says the California wildfire and poor air quality make living here unappealing and downright scary. But she says nearly every place she looks to move to is experiencing some element of climate risk, and the new analysis by Redfin, a real estate brokerage, reveals more Americans are moving into areas that face the highest climate risks than ever before. Redfin analyzed data from Climate Check, a real estate climate risk assessment broker, and the U.S. Census, which showed that the top 50 U.S. cities facing climate risk in heat, storms, drought, floods, and fires, the majority saw an increase in population over the last 5 years. Counties with homes facing the highest heat risk saw populations increase by an average of 4.7% over the last 5 years. Counties with homes facing high drought risk saw populations grow 3.5%. Fire risk counties grew 3%, flood 1.9%, and storm 0.4% over the last 5 years. Meanwhile, places with relatively low climate risk have experienced population declines. The 50 counties with the lowest number of homes facing heat risk, for example, saw population loss of 1.4% in the last 5 years, according to Redfin. Counties around New York and Chicago, both in states that are already leading the U.S. in population decline, only lost more people during the pandemic when homebuyers left metro areas in exodus, according to Redfin. Counterintuitively, people are moving to places with higher climate risk, said Daryl Fairweather. What a great ironic name.
What a name.
Yeah, a chief economist at Redfin, and it seems like climate, although it's something that people care about, is the bottom of the list where it's not a top priority. For example, migration to Wasatch County, Utah, just outside Salt Lake City, is up almost 15% in the last 5 years, but Wasatch County has the third highest fire risk in the U.S., with 96% of the homes at risk. The area it's a hot market, everybody. It's en fuego. The area
do they have the real estate thing, the square footage and then percentage of likely to be wiped out by wildfire, or is it just baked into the price? It's like you're right next to the
housing market,
and essentially it's only
so cheap you can buy two.
Hey, as a real estate agent, let me just tell you, this housing real estate market here in Utah is literally on fire.
You can buy two for the price of one.
The area became even more popular in the last year amid the pandemic, with people looking for affordability, more space, and proximity to the outdoors. 2020 saw some of the worst wildfires we've ever seen in Utah, said Ryan Aycock, agent and market manager for Redfin in Salt Lake City. I don't necessarily believe that it's going to slow down the people moving into the area. It's still extremely affordable. It's still a very desirable place to live compared to a lot of places. Affordability appears to be a big factor. Of the 50 counties with the largest share of homes facing high heat and storm risk, more than half had median sale price below the national average of $315,000. Nothing will deter them. Williamson County, Texas, part of the Austin metro area, has the highest heat risk in the U.S., yet it's the county with the biggest growth in population at 16.3%. Highest heat risk, highest population growth.
Phoenix, Arizona still exists, and I don't know how. Like I like the there's a thing for like a King of the Hill. There's this hilarious little 30-second clip where he like gets out and is like oh god, the heat, it's so much, and it's like this city is a testament to man's arrogance. You know, I have that kind of feeling sometimes when I look at some of these city outlays.
That's an interesting, Tyler. That's an interesting point because the growth in both Vegas and Phoenix was based on the exodus from Southern California. Now that climate is a part of the metric or the goal for these families as they leave Southern California, they might be staying on the freeways a little bit longer and not.
We should set facial recognition checkpoints to make sure they're going for the right reasons.
I think people continue to put climate risk in the back of their minds. I think that there are people that will do anything to be on the ocean and the coast of Florida, and nothing will deter them, including ocean level rises, apparently. That's despite a record-breaking Atlanta hurricane season last year, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is predicting a 60% chance of above normal hurricane season again this year, with Florida often a target. Still, home sales in Palm Beach and Miami are up 270%. During the pandemic fueled, So clearly, people are not using data to choose their certainly.
I got a question. The insurance companies, they use data. They've got the tables of like exactly to the penny of how much they have to pay out for all these things. If they see the increasing amount of that, are they going to be like, they also happen to be along with the pension funds, like the groups that have a lot of on-hand capital to throw at things. If they can park their money somewhere that actually does something, do you think we're going to start seeing them deploying their capital that where their outlays essentially are for their expenditures? I mean, do you think that might be a factor here in the near future?
What the one thing I do like is that the geeks from the Bay Area, notably many of them moving to Austin and Miami, the highest heat risk and the area with the two areas that are wildly disproportionately going to be impacted by climate change. And let's hope those geeks settle in there and start, rather than leave when the hurricanes and the heat waves come, actually convert their intellectual prowess and focus for the benefit of addressing climate change. So that would be
adaptation's a whole field. It's a fascinating one to look at.
So,
Tyler, I think one area that we should look at is the single-family home the best, technology for housing people?
Okay.
So maybe, I'm not advocating having a high-rise like Dubai or New York, but maybe something similar to Barcelona where it is more managed, master community plan. Then you can do a better job in heating, cooling, protecting it against wildfire. We have to adapt. We can't say, since we have been doing this for a couple of 100 years or 400 years, these are the building codes. Maybe we need to have a new way of doing things. This applies to our public health because of COVID. So we need to adapt.
Yeah. So possible Havana, AP News says possible Havana syndrome incidents probed in Harris delay, which we covered yesterday. Let's hope they figure that out. And OnlyFans drops its porn ban. We covered that. And
it's a Christmas miracle.
Yeah. Did hackers just pull off a maritime colonial pipeline 2.0 ransomware attack on bunkering storage firm in Canary Islands? Troubling, but probably didn't live up to criminals' hype. Okay. And here we go. Real fast here. We got a whole bunch of really good ones. From Katerina, control methane to slow global warming fast. According to nature.com, carbon dioxide reductions are key, but the IPCC's latest report highlights the benefits of making cuts to other greenhouse gases, namely methane. And this one,
seaweed to the cows and fish to the rice farms would actually reduce it by, I think it was like 40 to 50%. It's actually somewhat shocking how much you just put like 2 or 3 agricultural change practices, you can radically cut down that those emissions real quick.
Yes, that's exactly what the Japanese are doing to their cows.
The number, Tomoko sends in this one from CNN. The headline reads, number of people with high blood pressure has doubled globally, large studies find. Aging society is not just a number of old people are increasing. A giant global study finds that the number of people over 30 with high blood pressure has doubled over the past 30 years, and more than half of them are not being something. I just tweeted that one out. And the next one from Poppy says that Israeli and Japanese firms to deploy autonomous mobile robots, AMRs, at its Shizuoka distribution center. It's Japanese company and to set to deploy autonomous robots. Okay, I forget why I highlighted that one. And Mahogany sends in this one from the South China Morning Post is now reporting about the Havana syndrome. It says, from China to Vietnam, why are U.S. envoys becoming sick? Interesting that the South China Morning Post is doing that article as well. The Telegraph has a headline, British troops at Kabul airport have warned that desperate Afghans could overrun the airport. Even though the British and American troops have guns, what can they do? Anyway, the next one from DW. What do we know about the origins of the pandemic? A U.S. investigation into the origin of the pandemic is due to conclude. In fact, it just concluded. And in fact, we just got the results back. And Cheryl, please remind me. It said nothing conclusive, basically. Yes?
Inconclusive.
There you go.
Sounds like some scientists were involved on this one.
Yeah. The next one is a new chip cluster will make massive AI models possible, according to Wired. We covered that. Madagascar is on the brink of climate change-induced famine. BBC News. People are eating locusts to survive. It's ironic that people who had hardly anything to induce climate change are suffering first. The country is on the brink of experiencing the world's first climate change famine.
Tyler.
Yes?
Johan say he wants to come up to say hi.
Okay, and Jeremiah. Okay, here we go. Rise of robo-drama. Young Vic creates new play using artificial intelligence, according to The Guardian. Inspired by a Guardian article, the theater's surreal and spellbinding show AI is a collaboration between humans and GPT-3. So it's a play, a robotic drama based of humans and GPT-3. That sounds
do they have the Chuck E. Cheese like animatronic puppets that do the
thing? So from time.com, an AI helped...
Hang on, sorry. Chris, I want to start a chain out in China with you called Chuck E. Z's.
Oh, that'd be so bad.
An AI helped write this play. It may contain racism. AI is the world's...
No, it may contain PR generating headlines, controversy that can't be talked about. And
even better if an AI wrote that headline, because that's a genius headline, actually. AI is the world's first play written and performed live with an artificial intelligence. But what do you do when the AI begins to reflect humanity's darkest side?
You dramatize it, of course.
You sell that shit. That when if it bleeds, it leads. And what's the racist version of that?
You get that HBO special. Essentially, you got all the things tied in with stuff.
The PGA Tour creates mobile AR experience for in-person fans at their 2021 FedEx Cup. That's nice. The next one is a new technology lays groundwork for large-scale, high-resolution 3D displays. Researchers have developed a prototype display that uses projection to create large-scale 3D images with ultra-high definition. And there's a photo of the device.
They have been trying to do this for forever, and I'm glad they finally decided to go forward on actually deploying something.
Yeah, you got to look at this photo. It's quite wild.
If you look at the Microsoft HoloLens for the early demos they did for it, like the earliest, the PGA was one of the very first to basically demo that technology. So they have a very healthy AR division that basically does all sorts of contracting out with all sorts of shops around the area with things. It was annoying because they rarely got beyond demo stage for any of them with stuff. So it's good to hear that someone finally crossed the finish line of like, hey, we actually are comfortable deploying this with real world scenarios.
The new Oculus Quest feature can automatically sync VR photos and video clips to your phone. That's handy for sharing content and little video clips and photos. And Zhang Zhan, the Chinese journalist, was sentenced to 4 years in prison for documenting the COVID outbreak in Wuhan. She was a blogger, video blogger. She is now seriously ill from hunger strike and weighs less than 90 pounds, her former lawyer said. And Zimbabwe under complete control of Chinese. We covered that from the India Times. And we got this one.
Tyler,
yes?
I have a really, really good one.
Go ahead.
You know that you have been ranting all over this, that your primary income channel through our beloved OnlyFans are going to ban your business. They have reversed that decision today, and they're saying, no, we are not going to ban everyone creative creator on our platform. They are free to continue as they do.
Yes.
Adult creative, that's quite a term.
And that leads to the last headline of the day. It's a very good segue. Man dies after having sex with epoxy adhesive instead of a condom. Police are probing the bizarre case of a 25-year-old man who suddenly died after using a high-powered epoxy resin instead of a condom while having sex.
Why did they say probing?
Why did they say high-powered?
They used the adhesive to avoid pregnancy, a local investigator told the Times of India of the prophylactic fiasco, which occurred June 22nd at a hotel in Ahmedabad. According to a senior Ahmedabad city police officer, Salman Misra and his unnamed ex-fiancée were captured on closed-circuit television, securing footage, entering the fatal flophouse in the Juapura neighborhood of Ahmedabad. Several witnesses said that Misra, along with his former fiancée, both of whom were addicted to drugs, had gone to a hotel. The senior police official told the local outlet. There, they applied an epoxy adhesive on his private parts as they were not carrying any protection. In addition to sealing off Misra's manhood, the couple also mixed the epoxy with whitener and inhaled the mixture just for a kick. The Lovebirds' acquaintances told an official the doomed duo were intoxicated from the chemical cocktail at the time of the ill-fated hookup. The following day, Misra's acquaintance, Feroz Shaikh, discovered the man laying unconscious in the shrubs near an apartment complex, whereupon he took him home, according to the Times of India report. His condition deteriorated rapidly, prompting the friend to rush his friend to the Sola Civil Hospital. Police report that Misra died due to multiple organ failure caused by the MacGyver-style contraceptive.
Oh my!
What a great line!
I have so many questions. Who has epoxy and not a condom?
Was this the two side?
He was an engineer. I can guarantee he was an engineer.
What
and
I
was
love
this
is
the kind
fact,
you had to mix?
Well, that's my question as well. What I love is the fact that Durex has tried really hard for the past couple of years to get people okay with pausing for a moment to open a packet, and there are people out there who are willing to do a two-part mixing process
epoxy
and 5-minute curing time.
How did
Well,
this
high on
girl get
drugs.
away with no injury? Also,
well, remember
what
they were
happened
sniffing.
I have so many questions.
They were sniffing the epoxy while they were doing it too. It was a twofer.
Yeah, but how did he not stick to her?
That's killing two birds with one stone. Yeah.
Am I the only one that's having issues visualizing?
I'm having a really hard time understanding. You know, I thought the people that were doing the milk crate challenge were in a special place, but I think this one wins the day.
That brought
And
me
in
to one
terms
point. Do
in
you
terms of
think
asking,
Beijing will ban condom because of birth control?
Of course.
Yeah.
So will they give up condoms during the Olympics?
Maybe not.
They
Maybe
need
they're
to
going to bring the
They're gonna
Pope.
be
They'll bring the Pope over. They're going to bring Catholicism
They
over there,
didn't.
and
They're gonna
Bring
DNA scan
they
them.
didn't.
How much of China's exports are epoxy?
There's 300 million tons of petrochemicals worldwide. Epoxies essentially are a subset of that. So it's got to be. I'm going to say it's under 50 million tons. It's going to be below that, probably way lower.
I have a really good relationship with Henkel. I will get a number and report back, guys.
Okay, guys. It's been another
Crack
fun
team
one,
here.
and we will catch you next time. Join